My girlfriend told me that her family was in a serious accident, but when I checked up on them, absolutely nothing seemed to be wrong, and they all seemed to be completely fine. And now I'm convinced that my girlfriend lied to me for no reason the entire time. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 22-year-old male, and I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend who's 23 for about 3 years and 8 months now. For most of that time, we've had a strong and healthy relationship. We've supported each other, communicated well, and spent a lot of time together. Recently, I started a new job, so I've been a bit busier, but we still make time to meet every day, talk on video calls, and stay close. Earlier in our relationship, she told me she had a heart condition related to her vagus nerve. It never really affected our day-to-day lives, but I've always tried to be understanding and supportive whenever it came up. About a month ago, she mentioned feeling unwell, and she said her heart was racing, but afterwards she seemed fine and life went on. Things started to shift about a week ago when she told me and some of our mutual friends that both her father and grandfather had been in a serious road accident. According to her, they live in a mountainous rural area and had to be taken to a hospital 4 hours away. She even said that one ambulance got stuck in a landslide. Her father was reported to have developed blood clots, and her grandfather was in critical condition, eventually being transferred to the largest hospital in our state. Throughout all of this, she stayed at our shared flat, saying she was managing everything through phone calls. Then she told us that her grandfather had flatlined at the hospital but was revived, and later she said her father was being moved to the same hospital in critical condition. The next night, she claimed her father's ambulance had been in another accident and had to be redirected back to the regional hospital. And this is when I started noticing inconsistencies. She was telling us that she had been in constant contact with her family, her mother, brother, and doctors, but when I saw a missed call from her flatmate and briefly checked her call log, there were no signs of her calling or receiving calls from them. This really confused me because I had heard her supposedly talking to them in the room. I didn't want to jump to conclusions or accuse her of anything, so my friend and I decided to call her family directly, just out of concern more than anything else. Well, wouldn't you guess it? Her father answered and sounded completely normal. He said that no one had been in any accident or hospitalized. He also called her brother and he confirmed the same thing. But even after this, the following day, she told us her father had flatlined and was revived 20 minutes later. I'm at a complete loss right now. I care deeply about her and I want to believe there's an explanation, but at the same time, I'm feeling confused, hurt, and unsure of how to process everything I've been told. I also worry that this could be a sign of something deeper going on emotionally or mentally. So here's my question. How do I bring this up with her in a way that's honest but gentle? I don't want to accuse or corner her, but I do need to talk about what I've learned and how I'm feeling. Has anyone been in a similar situation or has any advice for how to approach this with care? What should I do? Oh man, this is super sketchy. Seriously, this is a big red flag in my opinion, and I would not ignore this. You mean to tell me your girlfriend has been lying about her father and grandfather nearly dying over and over again and is not at all explaining what's actually happening? Like, good lord, that's so weird. There's no excuse for that. Like, even her looking for attention is a weird excuse in and of itself. And for me, that just doesn't stand on its own 2 feet. It doesn't make any sense, and there really is not a good explanation for that. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would literally say to her, look, I spoke to your father and he's fine. Can you please explain yourself because this is so weird? And in my opinion, if I was in this relationship, there is no way I would ever take this lightly. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My former stepmother is one of the worst people that I've ever known, and now she has slowly turned up back in my life in a way that honestly I never expected. Here's what happened. I first met my former stepmother, who we will call Crystal for the sake of the story, when I was about 7 years old, and we didn't realize she was entitled until much later. At first, she was really nice, and my dad liked her for her kind personality, as well as, at the time, her deep faith. When they got married for the first few years, everything was wonderful, and I really got along with my older stepsister. But it wasn't until after she broke her leg that I started to see her entitled side. She was so demanding of us kids to do stuff, which at the time, us kids didn't know how to do. I was about 11 years old being asked to make dinner, and all I knew how to cook at the time was eggs. My dad had put a stop to a lot of it, but she would lay it on thick to him, saying that we should be doing this stuff because her leg was broken, even though it didn't prevent her from getting up to go smoke or grab another beer. It built up over the years until finally my dad had had enough with one incident that probably could be its own story in and of itself. They ended up getting divorced, and my youngest brother is in split custody due to the state that we live in, with my dad having the primary custody. Well, it turns out she was addicted to all sorts of substances, both legal and illegal, and still thinks that she's entitled to us kids even though I'm an adult now. Now, onto the event itself, I got an email from a site people use to look up offenders in your area, if you know what I mean. And specifically, the email was addressed to Crystal Bristol. It had her address in it, which I never lived at, as well as her name and phone number, but it was my email. I searched through my email to find out if this was a one-off fluke, but it wasn't. I have about 4 emails for sites that she signed up to using my email address. Now, I saved the emails if I decided to go legal with it, but I decided to be petty and change the passwords on the accounts before deleting them. I honestly don't know when or how she got my email, but I am not the little girl that she could bully around anymore. Yeah, I can't stand like former family members or like people who are like absolutely estranged in the family who then feel like they have some kind of ownership over you, even though clearly they're not a good person and they're obviously just trying to like use you in some kind of way. And in this case, it's like, oh yeah, you're trying to use my email address, like get lost, lady. So hopefully this ends sooner than later, because from the sounds of it, your stepmother does not sound like a good person. My friend's fiance, as well as my friend group at large, were very rude to my new girlfriend in a way that is truly costing me all of my friendships, because at this point I'm very frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, my friends and I had just all moved out and lived in the city just before COVID hit. A buddy of mine matched with a girl on Bumble and she brought some friends around, and very quickly we became one of those friend groups that dated each other. Now, I was one of the single guys because I didn't want to date within my own friend group. My friend dated this guy for a long time. She seemed cool, but definitely had some of her own issues with maturity and jealousy and other things. And a few summers later, she set me up with a friend of hers. Long story short, after a month, I knew I didn't want to date her, as we were just not compatible for one another. She took it to heart when it wasn't personal, and she really wreaked havoc on me the entire summer, including telling my friends any secrets that I had, lies about my body, personal details about my family. I mean, you name it, she said it. It ended sour, but I eventually moved on, except for the woman I briefly dated and my friend's fiance. Although we remained civil, everyone could tell that there was tension, and it caused me to feel alienated with my own friends. And my friend later got engaged to the original Bumble match. Fast forward to this summer, and I met someone through my local running club, and pretty quickly we hit it off, and we've been dating ever since then. We've been together for 10 months now, and it's been the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. Unfortunately, I got invited to my friend's birthday party in January, and his fiance had my past fling with her. The entire time my girlfriend and I were there, they were passive aggressive towards me and my girlfriend, and were acting pretty rude by not saying anything to me or her. Now, what hit the hardest was that my friends didn't bother to say anything to us either, because if her fiance's unhappy, then everyone's unhappy. Just before midnight, I left to go back to my apartment with my girlfriend, who was upset. I found out the next day after telling a friend who wasn't there that they were sort of rude for not saying anything, talking to her, and basically pretending in a way that she wasn't there and neither was I. Well, their response was to say, "That's insane. They told me you didn't properly introduce her to every person." And this really made me furious. For people who are my friends, it seems like my friend's fiance made that as an excuse to being rude, especially when I approached them saying her name and that she was my girlfriend, especially when some of them have already met her before and she sat there for almost 4 hours being ignored. I have friends outside of this group, but when I told them this story, they all told me how awful they sound, how rude they are, and how sad it was to treat someone new like that. And since then, some of the friends in that group no longer talk to me as much as they used to. Now, why am I posting this? Well, because next week is their moving in party to their new house where all family and friends are invited. I got a personal invitation from them asking for both of us to attend. Now, I can't help but feel as if this is a trap, and I refuse to put a good person through something like this ever again. So should I leave behind my group of friends? Am I overreacting in some kind of way? Should I call out my friend's fiance on her immature and toxic behavior? Because right now, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, these do not sound like good friends at all. It sounds like they've turned their back on you because of some weird misunderstanding or some kind of like circumstance with dating, and now they're literally treating you like crap right to your face while also pretending to still be friends. Like, in my opinion, I think you really need to take these situations for what they are and take them for face value. These people are treating you like crap. No friend in their right mind would act like this, and I think you need to listen to your gut here. Because I know if I was in your shoes, I would happily start focusing on the other group of friends. I would move over to them immediately and not look back. I wouldn't care if these people get upset by that, especially if they're going to be disrespecting you and your girlfriend like that. And you know what? It sounds like your friend's fiance is the reason all of this is happening, and the fact that everybody's going along with that, in my opinion, means that they all agree with this fiance. By them allowing this to happen, it really does mean that they're okay with it. And that, in my opinion, is not the mark of a good friend. And if I was in your shoes, there is no way I would ever want to deal with that. An entitled teacher gives me detention, all because I went to the bathroom in the staff bathroom, resulting in my mom as well as another teacher being livid about the situation. Here's what happened. Okay, so basically what happened is that I ate something bad, and I was really desperate to use the bathroom in my school. It was recess, and all the girls were hogging the main bathrooms like freaks trying to get ready for the Met Gala. Hysterical screaming, unintentional makeup sessions, bathroom hogging thing to chat with their annoying friends and to use their phones in private. And as a side note, we don't allow phones in the school day, and they collect our phones until the end of the day, where we retrieve our phones and call our parents and all this other stuff. There are special cases like art students or English class activities where they give students the privilege to keep their phones out. It was so bad that I had to move to our second bathroom, and yes, we have 2 bathrooms, one with 5 stalls and the other with 15 or 17. And this second bathroom was the bigger option, where the socially anxious people typically go to. Sadly, the security did not bother to unlock it and let me through. Plus, no one had the key for this bathroom yet. I was getting desperate during this time, and I was getting anxious about possibly crapping my pants. In our school, we have girls and boys divided into 2 sides of the school, where they primarily have lessons in their designated spots, or sometimes they'll go to the other side if their schedule tells them that they're having a class somewhere in the opposite side. There are girls' bathrooms on the boys' side and vice versa on the girls' side, and I wanted to go to the boys' side to use the girls' bathroom there, but sadly I couldn't hold it in, and that's where I discovered the staff bathroom beside bathroom number 2 to be empty. Well, I used it immediately, and I was relieved, but that's where the trouble started. My former math teacher, also known as the vice headmistress, who is the entitled teacher of this story, stood outside. She was with another teacher I didn't recognize who was also visibly displeased, and I tried to explain everything to them, but it simply wasn't enough. She looked at me and said, "What are you doing in the staff bathroom?" I responded back by saying, "I was desperate, miss. It really was an emergency." The teacher then said to me, "I understand that part, but you could have went to the girls' bathroom that was unlocked. Using the staff bathroom without permission is strictly prohibited." I then said to him, "But I went there and it was packed with a bunch of girls. I know that there may be vacant stalls right now, but I ate something bad, and I came this far and I was afraid that something bad might happen." Before I could continue, she interrupted me and said, "Still, that is unacceptable. You also could have gone to the office and asked for the key for the second bathroom. The staff bathroom are only for teachers and staff use at all times, and you must not use it a second time, else that's a misbehavior email sent to your parents. Understood?" I responded back by saying, "Yes, I understand, but miss, I could have made an accident if I hadn't used the staff bathroom right away." She then said to me, "I know that. Still, there are alternative places that you could have went to. You could have went downstairs to the primary bathrooms as well." Now, for reference, the primary bathrooms were prohibited for us 7th through 12th graders, and I couldn't even get there even if I wanted to. In the end, I had to sit in the reflection room as detention after school for an hour for taking a dump in the staff bathroom, and I was facing the walls purposefully from my anger. Eventually, as teachers passed by the room for a good 10 minutes, I spotted my other headmistress who manages the upperclassmen, namely the 10th through 12th graders. She immediately walked in and asked me why I was there. I explained everything and she looked livid after that. She told me that that teacher shouldn't do that, and using the bathroom was basic human rights which they cannot take from us. After bailing me out and comforting me, she had a talk with the other teacher and told me to leave quickly. I also told this to my mother, and she's planning to have a talk with the principal and this teacher about this situation since they kept me from leaving for an invalid reason. I don't have any updates on the situation yet, but right now my mother was truly disappointed, mostly from this crap, and also with them not informing my mother about it and making her wait late outside for picking me up to go home. We're currently sorting this entire thing out right now because this entire situation is incredibly frustrating. Okay, first and foremost, you did the right thing by telling your mom, because hopefully your mom can take care of this in a major way. That teacher is out of her mind if she's really gonna act like that and pretend like, "Oh, you can't use the bathroom for emergencies," and then send you off to detention as if you did something wrong. From the sounds of it, and especially based on the reaction from the other headmistress, it doesn't seem like you're a bad kid at all. If anything, it seems like you're just like a normal kid trying to go through school, and this other teacher has a stick shoved up where the sun doesn't shine and is taking it out on you just because you had to use the bathroom. So seriously, hopefully your other headmistress and your mom chew these people out for what they did to you, because this is absolutely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my apartment simply because I don't feel like I have to share with them, and I'm finally back on my feet after working incredibly hard? Because right now my whole family is saying that I'm the jerk, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 28-year-old male, and I've been working my butt off for the last 5 years after a really rough patch in my early 20s. I got laid off twice, I went through a breakup, ended up couch surfing for a while, and even stayed in my car for a couple of weeks. I finally landed a stable remote job last year, cut out all the non-essentials, and started aggressively saving. A few months ago, I got approved for a small but decent 2-bedroom apartment in Texas. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I'm not rich or anything like that. I've still got to budget carefully, but just the idea of not having roommates or sleeping in someone's living room feels like I've won the lottery. Well, I made the mistake of telling my mom, and she was happy for me until she casually mentioned it to my older sister, who immediately called me and said, "So when should we start packing?" Now, I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. wasn't. It turns out she assumed that because I was moving into a 2-bedroom apartment, it was obviously for her and her 2 kids, and her kids are ages 5 and 7. She's been living with her ex's parents for almost a year, says the situation is toxic, and she needs to get out as soon as possible. But here's the kicker. We haven't even talked in over a year. There wasn't a fight or anything like that. We just drifted apart. And she never once asked how I was doing when I was struggling. I told her gently at first that this place is my fresh start, and I've worked really hard for it, and it's my first shot at peace and privacy in years. Well, she flipped out. She said I was being selfish and that family helps family, and that her kids deserve a better environment. Then my mom jumped in, blowing up my phone. She told me that I should let them stay until my sister gets back on her feet, and that it's heartless of me to let my niece and nephew suffer. Now, everyone in my family is calling me ungrateful and cold, saying that since I don't have kids or responsibilities, I should be the one to make sacrifices. Some even suggested that it's just a couch, like I'm moving into a mansion or something like that. But I've been the person sleeping on couches, and I begged for help and I've gotten silence. I didn't guilt trip anybody, and I didn't try to move into someone else's home. I just figured it out. Now that I finally have something of my own, I'm being told that I'm the bad guy for not giving it away. So truly, am I the jerk for telling my sister that she can't move in with me, even if it means that her and her kids might end up in a shelter of some kind? I honestly feel like I'm drowning in guilt, but I also feel like I earned this. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I don't think you're obligated to help them out at all. Maybe that's heartless, but guess what? Just because you have a 2-bedroom apartment doesn't mean that she's somehow welcome to move in. Like that level of entitlement and just assuming like, oh yeah, I'm moving in, don't worry, I'm on my way. Like that's crazy and there's no good excuse for that. So no, you're definitely not the jerk here, because trust me, if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. I caught my husband on multiple hookup and dating websites, which has led me into a downward spiral, as right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, I had logged into my husband's computer to fill out some paperwork that needed to be printed. I then noticed that one of his open tabs was a map of a random apartment complex address. Immediately, I felt something wasn't right, so out of curiosity, I looked at the history on his computer, and my God, my gut was right. I found that he had created multiple profiles on hookup websites starting as early as November of last year. And when I say multiple, I'm talking about 15 sites, maybe more. I noticed on the majority of the websites, he was the one to initiate the conversation by sending explicit pictures to random women asking how they felt about casual hookups and wanting to talk more about them. Later on that day, when he got home from work, I confronted him about all of it. He said he wasn't serious about any of it and had created them due to having a mental breakdown, which he showed no signs of having one at the time. He swore up and down that's all it was. Well, about a week after I confronted him, that gut feeling of knowing something was off just still hadn't gone away. So I asked to see his phone, and I was right again. He has multiple dating apps on his phone, some of which were installed back in February of 2024. There were also lengthy conversations on Telegram that showed him asking about all kinds of services, if you know what I mean. At this point, I had gone into a downward spiral and began to experience symptoms of PTSD. By the time I somewhat snapped out of it, he had deleted all of his history on his phone and his computer, along with all the apps and the websites. Now this tells me that he's hiding more, but every time I ask him about it, he says there's nothing more that he's hiding. I may not be the smartest person in the world, but I do know that when somebody deletes all of their history, that usually means that there's more that he doesn't want me to find out about. So seriously, how do I get him to open up about the honest truth? I am not the type of wife who will constantly nag him about it until it eventually comes out. I stupidly still love him, and I don't want to end our 12 years of marriage, but I don't know how to trust him ever again, or get rid of the extreme PTSD that I still have from all of this. What should I do? Oh man, I can't say much of what you should or shouldn't do, but I know for a fact, in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be like absolutely losing my mind. There's no way I would put up with that for a second, and that, in my opinion, is a red flag that I simply could not ignore. Like, first off, I kind of wish you had taken pictures or screenshots or something, just so you know for a fact that no, you're not crazy, because if we're looking at this legitimately, there is no way this is some kind of like accident. He didn't do this because of a mental breakdown. He did this because yes, he was 100% gonna cheat on you. Like, that is absolutely what was gonna happen, and I'm so sorry to have to spell that out. So hopefully this works out between the two of you, because what your husband did, in my opinion, is incredibly messed up. Am I the jerk for offering my clothing to a coworker after I lost a bunch of weight? Here's what happened. So I have a coworker that I am very close to, and we eat lunch together every single day. Now, it's important to know that I have a lot of clothes, and so many things that I've never even worn that they still have tags on them. My coworker is always commenting to me that she loves my clothing, and if I ever decide to give anything away, please come to her first. And for reference, we were the same size. And I say we were the same size because recently I lost a lot of weight, and I've gone down 5 sizes. I've been working really hard at it, but I haven't been talking about it that much because it seems to be a bit of tension between the two of us. She's never said anything outright, just some passive-aggressive comments about how I'm getting too thin, and I just ignore it because a lot of people say that, and I think it's just a result of the shock of me losing weight. I still have about 30 pounds to lose before I even hit the 150 mark, and I'm still very short. I'm definitely not too thin, and I still suffer from body dysmorphia, so I don't even think I'm thin at all. I recently went through my clothing, and I have a shocking amount of things that have either never been worn or have only been worn once. So I put them together in boxes, and on my next trip into the office, I asked her if she would like me to bring those in so she could go through them. Well, her face took on this very shocked expression, and then she said to me, "Why would you ask me that? Why would you insult me by asking me if I want your hand-me-downs? That is so humiliating." And when she said this, I was stunned, and I think I might have actually said I was sorry and just walked away. To make things even worse, there's another friend in the office who was also my size, and as we went out to the car later that day, she asked me what the boxes were in my car, so I told her they were my larger size clothing and that I had brought them for our other coworker, but she didn't want them even though I didn't go into the details about it. Well, she went nuts and asked if she could go through the box instead. She called her daughter who worked very close by, and we spent the next 45 minutes going through the boxes and getting the stuff that she wanted. They literally took almost everything. While they were doing it, the other coworker came outside to leave for the day and saw what was happening, and she just got in her car and left, and later that night she texted me and lit into me about me giving the clothing to the other coworker, and now I'm so confused. Did I insult her in some way? And if I did, why would she even care if I gave the clothes to someone else? After several years of a good working friendship, she won't even speak to me anymore. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. It seems like this other coworker is just pissed off that you lost all this weight while she hasn't lost any. And instead of still being your friend, she's now trying to be like, "Oh, I can't believe you," and trying to play like the victim or some dumb crap like that. Like, no, I don't think so. Because you literally still considered her a friend, but she clearly feels otherwise. So no, this is not a friend, and this is not someone you should even have to deal with, because you absolutely didn't do anything wrong. My entitled downstairs neighbor bangs on her ceiling anytime we walk around, claiming that we're making noise on purpose and that we're trying to intentionally ruin her life. Things got so bad that she threatened me and my boyfriend, forcing us to call the cops to intervene just to fix this situation. And needless to say, we are hoping to get a better apartment in the future because we are sick and tired of this crazy Karen. Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I moved into a new apartment in August. It's older, so the floors are super creaky. And according to our lease, we're obligated to cover 90% of any room with carpet, except for the bathroom or the kitchen, just to try and help with the noise. It turned out our apartment was previously managed as a dorm by a local college, so the floors already have a layer of super thin, awful carpet. We also laid down more rugs to help with the noise cancellation. Our downstairs neighbor moves in about a month later, and within a month of that, starts banging on her ceiling when we get too rowdy. The first couple of times, it happened super late in the living room. We were moving around after midnight the first time, and later she came to talk to us and asked us to keep it down at night, which is like, okay, sure, fair enough. The next time was when we walked in from the airport at 10 o'clock at night. She came up, banged on the door, and talked over my explanation. I told her I was sorry, and I asked when she was hearing the noise, assuming it was just my cat running around at night. But no, she tells me that she knows it's not the cat, she knows it's us, and she doesn't live alone. Which again, okay, but whatever. So we started to go to bed earlier, as we settled into the apartment and our jobs. But the banging only continued. For months, she would hit our ceiling whenever we walked around. Going to bed at 10 o'clock, bang, she would hit the ceiling. Waking up for 5:30 for work, she would do the same thing. Even if you sat on the couch but you decided you wanted some snacks, she would still hit the ceiling. Around Christmas time, she comes to our door again. My boyfriend answered, and this time I recorded, and I'm so glad I did. This woman came up and looked my boyfriend in the eye and said, "You have to stop following me." My boyfriend says, "What are you talking about?" She looks at him and says, "I know it's not the cat or the dog or your girlfriend because I know your footsteps. I don't know how you figured it out, but you figured out how to listen to where I am, and you're following me around my apartment, and I'm sick of it." My boyfriend calmly responded that she sounds crazy and that we straight up don't care about her. She then told us that she doesn't live alone. So we're thinking, cool, she's practically insane, whatever. The banging continued with us stomping every time we heard it. She didn't like that, but it made it more fun. We had already explained the situation to our landlord, and they were thankfully on our side. But things only got weirder as this lady went from crazy to absolutely insane. Now fast fast forward, and our town was the first in the United States to be locked down under quarantine. So for the first few days, the banging gradually increased until one day this woman lost her mind. I will admit that we are early risers on the weekends. On this particular Sunday, we ended up waking up super early, but not doing much for the next few hours. We drank some coffee and sat on the couch until 11 o'clock. At that point, we decided to get up and clean the apartment. And that's when homegirl absolutely lost her mind. She had to be running from one end of her apartment to the other. She's banging her ceiling so hard that I'm convinced she's damaging it. At one point, I hear what sounds like muffled yelling after she followed me into the bedroom. We had plans that day, so we just ignored her. We finished cleaning and we started to leave. She must have been waiting for us to leave because for the first time ever, she walked out of her apartment right as we go to her landing. I was holding the dog while waiting for my boyfriend to come down, and as she starts to descend down the stairs, of course, she decides to turn around and say something. She says to me, "Tell your boyfriend to cut it out." I look at her and say, "Cut out what? Walking around? You're hitting the ceiling because of me and the dog moving, not him." This crazy Karen continues to spew some of this garbage at me all the way up until my boyfriend gets down to me. She proceeded to stay exactly 3 steps ahead of my boyfriend, slowing us all the way down the stairs. She tried to block us going out the door at the bottom, but backed off when we just didn't stop. She's continuing to yell at him all the way to the parking lot. Between myself and my boyfriend, he's typically the hot-headed one, while I'm typically the calm one. Amazingly, he kept his calm the entire time, calling her a crazy lady and ignoring her as we walked past her and her car to the dumpster. As I passed her car, she decided to continue talking to me, and I was just so angry not to engage. The entitled Karen said, "I'm serious, it's done." I say, "Okay, what do you want us to do? Crawl around? I already told you we have a 60-pound dog, and we're all just walking around." This crazy entitled Karen then said over top of my talking that I need to remember that she doesn't live alone. But I look at her and I say, "Okay, stupid, well neither do I. Do you see my boyfriend over there? Like, what's your point?" By the way, that's the 3rd or 4th time you've said that, and that could be taken as a threat. This crazy Karen then says, "You think it's a threat? Fine, it is." And at this point, I looked at her and I said, "Okay, well I'm gonna call the cops," with her saying that she would do the same. So we both call the cops and they pull up. They talk to her first and then they come talk to us. I don't know what she told them, but when they come talk to us, I told them everything she had said and done for the past 6 months. The officer explained that it was a civil matter and that it would have to be dealt with by the landlord, but assured us that they explained to her that it is perfectly acceptable to walk around your apartment at 11 o'clock on a Sunday. They also told her not to knock on our door ever again and that she's not allowed to bang on our floor over footsteps at any point. For a couple of nights, she got back at us by banging at 1:30 in the morning just to try and wake us up. We had already reached out to our landlord again, and at this point, he told us that he'd see what her problem is. But that's still not the last of his troubles with her though. We ended up talking to the people that live below her and telling them about the banging. It turns out they've heard it this entire time and had no idea what it was. Now that they know, they've also reported her to the landlord. The banging has stopped and we don't expect her lease to be renewed. And you know what? Hopefully we end up in a better apartment in the next couple of months. Yeah, that entitled crazy downstairs neighbor honestly had this coming. She tried to pull the power play of banging on the ceiling to try and get you to shut up. But in all actuality, you're not even doing anything wrong. You're just walking around your apartment. Like seriously, this Karen is completely out of line. And I think it was a really good idea to get the cops involved. This lady's crazy. She's waking you up at 1:30 in the morning. She's banging the top of her ceiling anytime any noise happens. Like seriously, if you're going to live in an apartment, there's gonna be noises that you probably don't like. But sometimes you need to just learn to live with it, even if you don't like it. So good for you for standing your ground, and hopefully you do find a better house to live in. Because I would hate for this lady's lease to get renewed and for you to be stuck with her all over again. That sounds like a nightmare, and that is not something I would ever want to deal with. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. An entitled Karen writes a bad review after we kept our store 20 minutes open after closing just to accommodate her and get her kids out of our store. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, I work at a buy, sell, trade toy store that has new and used toys. We also have a build station where kids can build minifigures. The store is located in a mall. So a woman with 5 or so kids came in on Sunday and were wanting to make their own minifigures, as well as look around the store. My coworker and I were more than happy to help them, and they all wanted to build their own figures. We waited patiently. Then about 10 minutes before closing time, we let them know that they had 10 more minutes before we had to start closing procedures. As a side note, there is one day a week where this mall closes early, which means the store closes early as well. They all said that was great, and my coworker and I went ahead and started cleaning up other areas of the store. After 10 minutes, we let them know that we would have to start closing down the store, and we would start ringing them up if they wanted. The woman started to get extremely huffy and asked why we were rushing them out. I explained that our store wasn't allowed to be open longer than the mall was, and that all store employees were supposed to be out at most an hour after closing. We told her she could let her kids finish their figures and that we could give her 10 minutes to do so. When the 10 minutes were up, I went over to let her know. We had another conversation about why she couldn't stay longer, which turned into a 5-minute argument where I was trying to stay calm and she was getting more and more aggressive. So I told her she could either check out now or we would have to close. She got extremely angry and had all of her children put all their items into the minifigure making area, and they stormed out. We ended up staying another 20 minutes to clean up after them and finish our procedures. The next day, my manager showed me the review she had made. Here's what it said, basically paraphrased. "We went in with my kids, unaware that they were closing early. They had a minifigure table, so I let my kids build some. They didn't let us finish or pay. Instead, they kicked us out and made us take apart our figures. The kids were super sad because we drove out of town to make them. I am extremely unhappy with the rude employees." My coworker and I explained what happened, and my manager watched the footage on our CCTV. And thankfully, after all of that, we did not get in any trouble. What an absolute jerk. First off, you came in right at the end of closing. It's literally the end of the day, and you seriously don't know that, hey, maybe we gotta leave? Like, that's just honestly lazy and really negligent on this lady's part. This is not the original poster's fault in the slightest. They were literally just trying to do their job and get this lady out the store so they could all go home. Like, if the mall's closing, then guess what? You gotta go. These people can't keep the store open just for you and your spoiled kids. So thankfully your manager believed you, because if they had not believed you and they somehow pinned this bad review on you, I think personally if I was in your shoes, I would have been looking for another job, because dealing with an entitled Karen like that is the absolute worst. But possibly getting blamed for something that you didn't do would probably be way worse in my opinion. I found out that my wife has a secret bank account that she's been moving money from our joint bank account over to this account, and I'm really confused and I don't know what's going on. Okay, to set the scene, I've been married to my wife for 10 years and we have 2 boys, one that's 6 years old and one that's 10 years old. I work full time and my wife is a stay-at-home mom. Our eldest boy is in school and our youngest is at home with her during the day. Financially, we do okay. There's no issues putting food on the table and paying bills, but we're not going on overseas holidays every year. Last night, I was looking at our joint bank account on the internet and I noticed an unexpected transfer of about $100. I thought that this was odd and I looked through the transaction history and I saw that there's quite a few transfers to this account. There doesn't appear to be a pattern to the frequency or the amount. I confronted my wife and she eventually admitted that she has a separate bank account that she hasn't told me about. I wasn't happy about this, but what really got me upset was that she refused to show me the account on the internet, as I wanted to see how much was in it and what purchases she had made. I called her a liar and untrustworthy, which I probably shouldn't have done in the moment. I went to bed without talking to her again. I got up early this morning to go to the gym while she was asleep, which is normal for a Saturday. I went through her wallet and I found her bank card. On the way home from the gym, I went to the ATM and checked the balance. Thankfully, she uses the same PIN for everything, and I found out there was only a few $100s in the account. The ATM only provides the balance and doesn't show past transactions. This seemed to stack up because I would have noticed money missing from our joint bank account if she had saved up thousands of dollars. She also hasn't made any unexplained expensive purchases. No new jewelry or expensive clothing. Sometimes there would be something new in the house, like a pot of plant or a new toy for the boys, which I didn't notice was purchased from our account. But I just figured she must have bought it when she went out grocery shopping or something like that. What I can't work out is why she refused to show me the internet banking details. I feel like she's really trying to hide something, but I can't work out what it could possibly be. And I guess this is honestly my main question. Could it be that she simply prefers to have some independence, or could it be something more serious? What should I do? First off, I don't think it was really appropriate to be looking through her bank account account? Like, honestly, that seems really controlling, and that doesn't seem right in my opinion. I understand you're trying to get to the bottom of this and try to figure out what's going on, but at the end of the day, that's not your bank account, regardless of if she's putting money in there from your joint bank account. And checking that bank account without her permission is a huge violation of trust. And this kind of leads me to believe that maybe you're doing something that is really controlling and is inappropriate in your life together. I mean, the way you're acting is kind of leading me to believe that maybe you're really controlling with your money, and this is the only way she can have any kind of money for her own to spend on what she wants. Now, don't get me wrong, the fact that she's taking money out of the joint bank account and putting it in this secret bank account is a little weird in my opinion. But I think overall, if you just speak with each other and talk about what's going on in your relationship, you can hopefully get to the bottom of this. But either way, I think you really need to tell her that you did look through the bank account and you know exactly how much is in there, because otherwise this is only going to cause problems in the future. And hopefully the both of you can figure this out. Am I the jerk for putting an outside lock on my bathroom just to prevent my wife from using it? Here's what happened. My wife and I bought a house together about 6 months ago. This is our first time living together. Our house is an old American house that has been reformed many times. As a consequence of this, it has a silly layout where there are 2 bathrooms right next to each other that share the same wall. When we went ahead and bought it, we made an agreement that I'd take the bathroom on the left with a shower and she would take the bathroom on the right with a bathtub. Hers is much more spacious than mine. I soon learned that my wife preferred to use my bathroom, but only to go number 2. She would go number 1 or take a bath and do her makeup in her own bathroom, but when the time comes to have a number 2 situation, she only wants to use my toilet. Now, I usually wouldn't mind this, but the issue is that she sits for far too long on the seat, which leaves streaks in the bowl virtually every time she goes. I first tried approaching this civilly by asking why she used my bathroom. She gave me a vague answer about preferring it. Then I asked if she could at least sit back a bit more. She said it was none of my concern how she sat on the toilet. I offered to change bathrooms with her, to which she said no thanks. Then I asked her to stop using it, and she said it was her house too, so she should be allowed to go wherever she wants. I'm honestly tired of opening the toilet lid and seeing a number 2 in the bowl. The day before yesterday, I installed a lock on the door that I could open with a key. At first, she didn't seem to take the hint. She asked me for a key to the bathroom, to which I said no. Then, as she really had to go, she started to panic and asked me again and again to open it. I told her that she has a perfectly good toilet in her bathroom. She finally relented, but came out of the bathroom extremely upset with me. She's been ticked off ever since and demanding that I remove the lock. Now, was I out of line here? Am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, this story is insane to me, because your wife is literally destroying that toilet and not flushing it. That part in and of itself is like, what is happening right now? Are you serious? Are you really gonna do that to someone else's toilet and then not have the decency of cleaning up after yourself? Like, seriously, if you guys want to have some kind of deal about who uses what bathroom, like, go for it. You could do whatever you want, but at least have the common courtesy of cleaning up after yourself. That is straight up disgusting, and I can't believe she's not taking that seriously. Because seriously, just imagine how she would react if you started doing the exact same thing to her bathroom. I'm pretty sure her safe space for baths or whatever she wants to do would suddenly become very disgusting very quickly. Like, honestly, that is so gross. And she's only going to your bathroom because she doesn't want to destroy her bathroom. So honestly, if this was the situation I was in, I would not hesitate to put a lock on that bathroom either. She is seriously being weird about this and incredibly selfish, and I don't blame you considering the extenuating circumstances. Am I the jerk for not wanting to eat dinner with my coworkers at a conference since I made plans to eat with my wife over video call? Here's what happened. I'm a 47-year-old male, and unfortunately, I was roped into going to a work conference recently. I'm a remote worker, but sadly, I was told that I needed to attend a conference that many of my coworkers go to each year due to how integral my duties were to this year's presentation. Now, I am not buddy-buddy with any of my coworkers or my boss, but I am professional with them. This was the first conference I had ever been to, so I did not realize how much these things consume the entirety of the time spent there. The first 3 nights of the conference there were different dinners I had to attend after typical work hours, and when over 8 hours had been spent doing work-related things at the conference already. Now, I don't really mind attending the actual conference that much. What I mind is the expectation that I spend any more time than necessary with my colleagues. In my opinion, if I've spent from 8:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock at night at the a work conference with coworkers, attending work-related sessions, and giving a work-related presentation, anything past 5 o'clock means that I'm no longer at work. I was already rather peeved that this was not the expectation at the start, but I was at least informed of these 3 different formal scheduled dinners once the conference schedule was released. The 4th and final night of the conference I expected would be completely mine because there was no conference-wide scheduled dinner. As such, the night before when I called my wife, I asked her if she wanted to eat dinner together, and we would do this through a video call. We would eat together, spend as many hours as possible chatting, all before going to bed. And when I asked her this, she said that that would be lovely. We made plans to call at 7 o'clock our time, and I was really looking forward to it, as obviously I love her and I love her company. Well, unfortunately, at lunch on the final day of the conference, my coworkers and my boss mentioned going to a specific restaurant. They asked if I was excited to go, and I said I was not going, but I hoped they would enjoy themselves. They acted like I smacked them in the face and asked me what I meant. I told them I had made plans to call my wife and eat dinner with her. I was then informed that apparently there is some kind of tradition of all of my coworkers eating dinner together on the last night. I said that I wasn't informed of that, and we had already eaten dinner together every other night, but I hoped that they enjoyed themselves nonetheless. My boss then said it was something I had to attend. Then some of my coworkers agreed and said it was an important part of the conference. I told my boss and my coworkers that it was outside of my work hours. It was unpaid and it was not scheduled. Plus, I prefer my wife's company over theirs, so I was not going. They then told me that I was being rude and I was being a jerk, and that I should have expected that we would all dine together on the final night. I said that that was ridiculous, but my boss implied that not attending would have repercussions, so I called my wife and apologized to her and sadly attended this stupid dinner. So am I the jerk for not wanting to eat with my coworkers? No, you are not the jerk, and honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would have dared that guy to try and fire me or in some kind of way retaliate against me for not going to dinner. Like seriously, I would just go straight to HR if he tried that on me, because that absolutely is going to violate so many laws it's not even funny. You're not on the clock, you're not obligated to go to this dinner. Your boss literally just made a veiled threat against your job, and that is completely inappropriate. Like, that is not okay. I totally understand you going to not try and rock the boat, but this is a good indication that these are not good coworkers, and this is absolutely not a boss you want to stick around with, because what that guy did is not okay. He cannot threaten your job all because you want to spend time with your wife. And by the way, that sounded like a really cute date with your wife. That would have been a lot of fun to sit in your hotel and have a video call where the both of you eat together, and your coworkers and your boss just completely ruined that. So you seriously deserve a better working environment than this, because what your boss said is unacceptable, and he had no right to threaten your job like that. An entitled couple steal a car from my car dealership after they claim they're gonna make payments on the car I sold them. But fast forward a few months and they haven't paid a single dime. So I decide to get some revenge. And not only did they get arrested for violating probation, but as a result, their kids also got taken away from them. And I've never been happier to get revenge on anybody in my life. Here's what happened. So for a bit of backstory, I'm a part of a small family-owned type used car dealership, and we have maybe 50 cars on the lot at any time, and our main business is subprime or people with less than perfect credit. We truly want to help the people who can't afford a car or who don't have the credit to buy a new car from a dealership. We're actually very liked in our small community. So recently I had these customers, let's call her wife and him husband. They were in their early 20s and they come into my store and I like them. They seem like a nice young couple trying to start out their lives. They have 2 very sweet little girls and could just use a break overall. They have made some mistakes in their early lives and have less than perfect credit. I coach them on how to improve their credit and they seem sincerely interested in fixing it, so I bust my butt to get them a loan with the wife's mother co-signing on a nice 3rd-row SUV. The wife is literally crying and hugging me because every other dealer turned them down. Now they are a little short on the down payment, so I take a check for the balance and we agree I'll cash it on his next payday, which was honestly mistake number 1. But this is pretty common in this line of work. Now I forget about them until the next week when I drop the check at the bank along with the other deposits. The next thing I know, I receive a notice from the bank stating that the check has bounced. Along with a couple of fees attached to me, the check comes back. It's a dollar amount that is considered a first-degree misdemeanor in our state, just barely not a felony. I reach out to the wife to see what happened and how we can make arrangements to get this taken care of. The last thing I want to do is go after a young couple with 2 small kids. At first, the wife is a little shocked and insists the funds were pulled from their account, and I show them the picture of the bounce check. She understands and says they can pay half in 2 weeks when she gets paid again, and then 2 weeks later they can pay the other half. I agree to this and just take them on their word, which is another big mistake. And from here on out, things escalate in a way that I honestly never expected. A couple weeks roll by and I don't hear from the wife or the husband, and I'm now thinking if I've just been taken for a ride. They're ignoring my calls, ignoring my text messages. It's really awful. I get a call from the bank and come to find out they haven't made their first payment either. Now, with this particular bank, if the customer does not make their first payment, we have to buy back the deal. Basically, we have to give the bank the money they sent us for the loan. After blowing up their phones and Facebook page, they finally call me back. I get the sob story of a century. The husband was apparently let go from his job, and he just started a new one, and the mom is going to help them get back on their feet. I go through heck and high water with the bank to make a deal with the bank that if they make their payment, they'll keep the loan, but I'm still on the hook if they miss any of their next 3 payments. The wife also tells me they'll make payments to me on the bounce check once he starts getting paychecks. So I agree, they'll make payments to the bank and I'll just go about my life. That is until next month rolls around. I get an email from the bank saying the wife didn't make the next month's payment and won't answer their calls. At this point, I'm furious. I'm ready to just go get their vehicle. They won't answer any of my calls, and when I call the mom scrounges everything in her social security paycheck to try and help make the payment for them and is still coming up short. The wife and husband tells her that they'll cover the balance, and of course they don't pay. The bank says the deal is a buyback, stating that we need our money back for the loan within 7 days. Now, the only way I can pay back their loan is if my floor plan, which is basically a giant credit card that we buy cars on, gets pictures of the car in my possession. I try to call or text or email or message them on Facebook to get a hold of both the wife and the husband, but they straight up block me on everything. They're basically just stealing the vehicle without paying. They even blocked the mom who has been trying to help them get this handled. Yes, they screwed over even their own mother in this ordeal. I just want to get the vehicle back and move on with life. So this is where I decided to get some revenge. I begin by dropping the check off at the local prosecutor, and they're delighted to file charges against them. I do some skip tracing, calling family members, all of which are more than happy to help us, because come to find out, the husband has had 7 jobs in 4 months and has burned every single family member with money that they've borrowed. I find the wife's father on Facebook, and the father has been trying to take custody of the deadbeat wife and husband's 2 kids because of how they treat them. He informs me they are staying in a sister's house right over the border. For reference, we are on the state line of 2 different states. I call up a repossession company, and even I myself drive the hour to go get the vehicle. They've been hiding it in the garage, according to the neighbors and the repo company. I do some searching and I find out they're both on probation for stealing a bunch of stuff from multiple stores. So of course I find out who their probation officer is, and I give them a call to see if she has the last known address of these 2 people. I then mention to her they're staying above the state line and bounced a very large check to me, and they're facing fresh charges in my town. She then tells me she appreciates this knowledge. Now, while I was up at their house one evening, I talked to one of the neighbors, who also, by the way, hates them. They're always yelling at their kids and at each other, and I convinced the neighbor to call me if they see the vehicle outside. And you know what? It took 1 day. I get the call, I send a very large friend who lives nearby them to go and get the vehicle. After many expletives, as well as berating my friend, they thankfully hand over the vehicle, but not before finally calling me while he was there and telling me how they're gonna sue me. Now at this point, I'm out quite a bit of money from the ordeal, but here's the best part about it. I just found out that by them living out of state, they violated their probation, and they just got sentenced to 30 days in jail for that. And they just had their video court date with a local judge on the new charges of the bounce check. So in the end, I got my vehicle back, and guess what? The grandfather in that situation got custody of the 2 kids. And I've never been more satisfied to get revenge on someone in my life. Wow, that's an awesome story. Not only did you get your car back, but you probably pulled 2 kids out of an awful situation. Like, these people were clearly not good people in general. They were not only across state lines, but they were also consistently stealing from stores and other people around them. Like, seriously, these people needed to go down. And sure, maybe you made some mistakes along the way, but it really seems like you gave them the benefit of the doubt. And you tried to help them out because, you know, you live in a small community, and you would think that people would try to be honest. So I don't think that's on you in the slightest. You tried to do the right thing and help them out in a time of need. But thankfully, in the end, you not only got your car back, but you got 2 awful parents put in jail who absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that I would be perfectly capable of doing what she does as a stay-at-home mom? Here's what happened. So I have a wife and a daughter. I work in finance and my wife is a stay-at-home mom as I earn sufficient money for the both of us. My wife is a great stay-at-home mom and takes great care of our house. I was lucky to buy a home as I earn well in a medium cost of living city. I love my wife, but she finds it humorous to say that I am incapable of doing household tasks. We had agreed that she would do them when we decided she would be a stay-at-home mom, but I do stuff occasionally when we are both home if she asks me to do it. But then if I say load the dishwasher for her, she will claim I did it wrong just because I do it differently than she does. The other day we were eating, and she told me about her day and how she went grocery shopping and optimized the cost by buying specific items at specific stores and accounting for the cost of traveling to each store, and she made an offhanded remark that I would never be able to do that and said it in a kind of way to imply that I wouldn't know what to do with myself without her. I replied back saying that of course I could do it. I handle complex decisions and calculations at my work as I work in finances, and I have a master's degree, and what I do involves way more intellect than household operations, even though I acknowledge and appreciate what she does. In the end though, I would be capable if the roles were reversed. She got angry and seemed to think I was calling her stupid when I wasn't, and then she began to cry, and now I feel like a complete jerk. She said she was a very good student, and had she graduated, she would be in my position as well. My wife and I met in college, but she was an international student studying physics and computer science, but she had issues with her loan from her home country and could not afford to complete it, and we ended up getting married so that she could stay. Initially, she wanted to complete it later after finding the funds, but she agreed to be a stay-at-home mom when I got a good job, and I appreciate that a lot, as we were able to have a kid early on, even while I was both completing my master's degree and working full-time. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, it really does sound like you're the jerk in this situation. Your wife sounds like a very smart woman who wasn't able to finish college because of money. There's no other reason why she couldn't finish college. It wasn't her first option to be a stay-at-home mom. She very easily could be in your position. You really need to understand that. And based on the way you reacted to the things she said, you clearly completely missed the joke. She was obviously joking that you wouldn't be able to handle the stuff that she does every day. She's clearly trying to make the best out of a situation that she probably doesn't enjoy. She clearly wants to complete her studies, and yet here she is as a stay-at-home mom trying to shop in the most optimal way. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the way the wife was speaking did not seem disrespectful or in any way some kind of jab at you personally. Like, I really don't think she was trying to call you stupid or incapable or anything like that. I think personally that this was just a tongue-in-cheek moment and you completely missed the joke. So you know what? I don't blame her for crying. If I was in that situation and I couldn't complete my degree and I was living far below my intellectual potential, I would be really upset too. If I was in her shoes, I would probably want to go back to school and finish my degree. It's great that you earn enough money for the both of you, but your workload is something you agreed to just as much as she agreed to be a stay-at-home mom. So seriously, you need to apologize. What you did was incredibly rude and completely uncalled for, and she has every right to be upset considering the circumstances. My entitled manager demands that me and my coworker make it back home as soon as possible, so we decide to maliciously comply, costing the company a lot of money in the process. Here's what happened. In my role as a team lead at an engineering company, I had 3 years of experience under my belt before a new manager stepped in. Unfortunately, this manager didn't seem to grasp the company's operations or bother to learn about our work environment. One day, a significant training session was scheduled with a client in a city located about 1,000 kilometers away. To make sure that we were well prepared, my colleague and I took a flight the previous night, aiming to be at the client's office by 8 a.m. start time. On the day of the training, we arrived promptly at 8 o'clock, joining representatives from other firms in the conference room. However, as the minutes ticked by, it became evident that something was amiss. 8:30 came and went, followed by 9 o'clock, and then 9:30. Feeling increasingly puzzled, we decided to step out and ask the reception about the delay. It wasn't until 11 o'clock a.m. that we learned the unfortunate truth. The trainer had fallen ill, and the training session had been canceled. With a mix of disappointment and determination, my colleague and I swung into action. I called up the airline to rearrange our flights while my colleagues contacted the hotel. The hotel graciously allowed us to stay an extra day without any additional charges, and the airline accommodated our flight changes without any penalties. In a twist of fate, we managed to salvage the situation by arranging a dinner with local colleagues and even getting some client project managers to join us. Armed with our well-devised plan, I reached out to my former boss to fill him in. He agreed with our approach, but reminded me to loop in the new manager. And here's where the story takes a bit of a turn. When we informed the new manager of our strategy, he reacted in a rather explosive manner. It seemed like he was more interested in yelling at us rather than listening to our explanations. Despite our attempts to clarify the situation, he insisted that we return immediately, showing no willingness to understand our point of view. It was at this junction that we decided to comply, even if it was going to be with a twist. So we went to the hotel and checked out by 4 p.m. They charged us for another night, which we accepted with a resigned nod. At the airport, the airline informed us about the additional fee for changing our flights, which we accepted with a knowing smile. To our surprise, the airline then announced a delay due to a technical issue with the plane. Passengers who agreed to wait would receive food credits, and that's when we saw an opportunity and we took it. As time wore on, our flights were further delayed, and at around 11:30 p.m., I couldn't resist the urge to send an email asserting that we'd be back in the office when we were ready. Frustration mingled with a sense of amusement as I hit the send button. We finally made it home at about 1:30 a.m. the next day, a journey that cost the company extra money and disrupted our local meetings, which could have salvaged the situation. The following day brought a face-to-face encounter with a new manager. He summoned me to his office and began berating me for our actions, but I stood my ground, calmly explaining our decisions and circumstances that led to them. Slowly, his demeanor shifted from aggression to understanding as he began to grasp the bigger picture. A few months later, I decided it was time to move on from the company. During my farewell, the manager approached me and awkwardly asked if our strained relationship played a role in my decision. Without hesitation, I looked him in the eye and I confirmed that it was indeed a main factor. Although it made for an uncomfortable farewell lunch, it was honestly an incredibly satisfying moment. Good for you for standing your ground and telling them exactly what's up. This guy clearly ruined this job for you. I mean, come on, why would he be like, you gotta get home right away? Like, seriously, this guy's weird. He could have easily been like, oh, no problem, no expense to the company. Sure, just stay the extra night, I don't care. Also, the fact that you were organizing some kind of training with clients, or at least some kind of dinner get-together to try and salvage the botched training, that in and of itself should have been a good thing that your manager was seeing. But instead, he decided to be an entitled jerk. He decided to have a power trip and be like, no, you've got to come home right away, even though there was literally no reason to act that way. Like, seriously, I would have left this job as well. There's no way I would have put up with that and have to answer to some weird manager who's just gonna be a stick in the mud pretty much no matter what. So honestly, good for you for finding a better job, as well as getting away from this weird entitled manager. An entitled tenant at our local property decides to complain and report our property for even the smallest of things. So we decide to maliciously comply to all of his demands, making him wish he had just kept his mouth shut. And I've never been happier to get back at anybody in my life. Here's what happened. My parents had a few rental properties. One was a 3-story Victorian house divided into apartments. Two of the neighbors didn't like that it was a rental. One was often referred to as Mayor because he spent most of his time going around the neighborhood telling people how to do everything, from mowing their lawn to pruning shrubs, whatever he saw that he didn't like. I had friends on the local cemetery maintenance crew, and they had stories about him, and they're the ones that gave him the title of Mayor. He would come up there regularly to tell them what they were doing wrong and what they should do instead. The other neighbor was a childhood friend of his and never had any complaints of his own, but always backed up anything his friend said in any complaints. The neighbor didn't like that it was a rental, so he complained constantly. In addition to phone calls and personal confrontations, he went to borough council meetings to complain and submitted complaints to enforcement for anything that they could find. We once got fined because the address numbers painted on the trash cans were basically off by only a few inches. He started to complain about the house needing paint, and at first he didn't have any luck, but eventually he prevailed, and we got the order to paint the place. We didn't have a lot of money, so my folks went to the local paint place and purchased all the stuff they wanted to get rid of. So stuff like returns or things that didn't mix right, whatever they could get, and even had a few painters donate their leftovers. I spent hours in the sun hand mixing the paint that was poured into a huge trash can, and once it was mixed, it was poured back into the cans ready to paint the house. It turned out to be a bright pink color. We started to paint the house, and the color was not well received at all. The neighbor and his friend went to the Bureau Council meetings to get it to stop. They complained to the code compliance people, and the answer was that there was nothing in the code that states what color a house has to be painted, only that it must be reasonably maintained. They also said that you asked for the house to be painted, so guess what? You're getting what you asked for. And honestly, this guy absolutely had it coming. Honestly, that's such a weird way to treat people. Like seriously, just deal with the house and just live there. There's no reason to freak out and be a weirdo over the place that you live in. You already live in a really cool house as it is, so the fact that you want to cause everybody there all this trouble is honestly just really disturbing to me. And I also love that the local enforcement couldn't do anything about it. They basically just said, well, sorry, you wanted them to paint it, so now they're painting it. You're just gonna have to learn to live with the color. And that honestly is really funny to me. Not that you had a weird color on the house, but mostly the fact that this guy didn't like the color. So good for you for maliciously complying, because this tenant was being a weirdo and he absolutely had this coming. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter that she doesn't have a say in how the household is run because she doesn't provide any rent? Here's what happened. So I have two daughters. My first daughter, by the name of Sarah, is 24 years old. She has a job but lives at home. She pays $500 for rent monthly. My 22-year-old daughter, by the name of Lily, has autoimmune issues, heart issues, and got a diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome 2 years ago. Lily considers herself disabled and says her fatigue is too severe to work. Yesterday, Lily and I got into an argument about what decisions she gets to make in the household. We recently downgraded to an apartment after her father and I got a divorce. Lily did not get to see the new place before we moved and was with a relative during the moving process, so I decided who got which room. I chose the biggest room. Sarah chose the smallest room, but the size difference isn't huge between the rooms. Lily claims she wasn't upset that she didn't get the biggest room, but was upset that she didn't get input in the discussion and says she felt like she doesn't have any say in the decisions of the house or any personal space. She cited an example a few days ago when she took the car keys in after a doctor's appointment, and I walked into the bathroom while she was in it to ask for the keys. She asked if she could finish, but I told her I needed the keys right then to see a friend. She felt it was inappropriate that her personal space was intruded upon and that I came in without knocking. She comes into my room without knocking to ask questions, so I do not see how it's such a big deal. I also told her simply I get the biggest room and I get to decide who gets what in this house because I am the mother. I then asked Lily, since she doesn't contribute rent to the household, what exactly does she contribute? She listed simple chores and other tasks that she does that were very basic that honestly an 11-year-old could do. She claimed because of her chronic illnesses, it is hard for her to do much and she gets very fatigued very easily. I told her if she contributed rent money, she would have more power in family decision making. Lily started to cry and said she is currently trying to get on disability, but that is a long process. She also said I was being unfair because I know she has been sleeping 12 to 20 hours a day. I told her I understand it's hard that she currently can't contribute money, but that's just the reality of it. She pressed to still be included in household decisions, and I asked her if she really thought we were equals. She said yes, which was a surprise to me. I am the adult of the household and the sole provider. My child is my child, but I do not view her as an equal. Later, Sarah told me that Lily had a conversation with their father and he called me an absolute jerk. I've told Lily multiple times in the past that if she's so unhappy here, she is free to live with him, but she claims she cannot because he moved across the country and she doesn't want to leave her team of doctors here. So am I the jerk in this matter? What should I do? Yes, you absolutely are the jerk. Your daughter isn't pretending to be disabled. She's not choosing to have these issues. She literally is disabled. She wouldn't be applying for it if it wasn't the reality. Like, honestly, this is not her fault. She did not choose this life. This literally was inflicted upon her by illnesses that she cannot control. And the fact that you're not more compassionate about her situation and that you don't see her as an adult or as an equal is really disturbing. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but you do not sound like a very kind, compassionate, or good mother at all. You literally walked in on her while she's using the bathroom and asked for the keys instead of waiting, what, 5 minutes? You could have at least knocked first, like, come on. And her walking into the bedroom is not the same as the bathroom. You are literally old enough to know the difference and you shouldn't have done that. I'm honestly even questioning if the original poster even likes their daughter. Like, you're treating her horribly, you act as if she's a child and she can't do anything, when in reality she's an adult who has limitations that she cannot control. So yes, you are the jerk in this situation. You are completely dismissing the reality of your daughter's situation, and the way you're treating her is absolutely unacceptable. My boyfriend's entitled friends demand that I move out of my house so that they could stay there while they visit their friends in the city. And despite the fact that I've never met these people in the first place, my boyfriend is now calling me a jerk for not being willing to uproot my life just for these entitled jerks. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my boyfriend has two friends who live in another state. Let's call them Jack and Liz. Those are not their real names. They want to come visit us in our state with their 4 children, ages ranging from 5 years old to 10 years old. I live in the downtown area of a city, while my boyfriend lives about 1 hour away in the suburbs. My house is close to where I go to school full time, so about a 5-minute walk, and also close to where I work. About a 10-minute walk for my first job and 10-minute drive for my second job. I live with 3 dogs, and because of my busy schedule, I have a dog walker come by every day to feed and care for them. When Jack and Liz come to visit with their kids, they are asking to stay at my house. Here's the thing though, they want me to leave my house so that their family can stay there with complete privacy. I think it's important to note at this point that I've never met or even spoken to Jack and Liz before this point. They are my boyfriend's friends and not mine. Also, they are originally from our city, so they have their parents and their family members who still live there. They seem pretty wealthy mostly because they tell my boyfriend that they are. Liz is a stay-at-home mom and has never worked before because Jack has received many inheritances from deceased family members, and he brags about his high-paying job. They also own about 10 rental properties, and they collect passive income from them. Before meeting Jack, Liz also did not work because her family is wealthy and supported her. The thing is, my commute to work and school is about an hour each way from my boyfriend's house in the suburbs. I already have such long days that changing my commute to be 2+ hours a day, even for a week, is giving me anxiety with all the stuff I have going on between work and school. Also, I don't have anyone to walk my dogs at my boyfriend's house, and even if I were to hire a dog walker, he doesn't want a stranger having access to enter his house. Finally, it would just be really uncomfortable to leave my house, and I'm really nervous about having young children running around my house when I'm not there, and my house is definitely not childproof. So am I the jerk here? My boyfriend seems disappointed in me because I am not opening my home to his friends, and I am already making a bad impression on them. He also thinks that I am doing this because I'm deciding to not like them based on what I know about them. Stuff like they're always asking to use my streaming logins but keep logging me out, and when their dogs get old, they abandon them at shelters so they can make room for new puppies. Now, don't get me wrong, this stuff definitely does bother me, but I do think that even if it were my own friends making this housing request of me, I would tell them to get a hotel or just to stay at their parents' houses. What should I do? You are not the jerk for giving up your home. These people are rich and they're super entitled. You want to know why they want to go at your house? It's because it's convenient. They don't want to have to get a hotel. They don't want to have to get an Airbnb. They want the cheap option. And the cheap option is by taking your home. And that is very unfair for your life and your schedule. Like, you have 2 jobs, 3 dogs, and you're doing stuff every single day of the week. You have a busy schedule. It's not like you can get up and live somewhere else just to accommodate these people. Like, sorry, that's not going to work like that. You want to know why your boyfriend seems disappointed too, by the way? It's because you're not bending to these people, most likely in the way that he's bent to them in the past. These are the type of people, it seems like, based off of the shady stuff they're currently doing, that will easily take advantage of anything in front of them. They're already rich, what else can they get out of people? I mean, just look at what they're trying to do to your house. They're literally trying to take over your house instead of staying with family or getting a hotel or getting an Airbnb, which, by the way, all 3 of those options would be reasonable. But instead, they want to try and get you out of your house so they can have easy access to the city. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. And if I was in your shoes, I would also say no. You can also tell your boyfriend to back off with the guilt tripping because he's trying to be like, oh wow, you don't like him because of the stuff they've done. But in reality, it's like, well, no, I just don't like them because they're trying to take my house. It's almost like you have no say in the matter, and that is really disappointing. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation. Your boyfriend is being weird and his friends are being incredibly weird. They're trying to take your house even though they don't even know you. And every single hesitation you have about this situation is something I thought of as well. So if I was in your shoes, I would stand my ground and tell them, nope, you gotta go somewhere else. Because that kind of entitlement should not be entertained in the slightest. And by giving in, you're only feeding this weird vicious cycle. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My brother demands that I thank him for cleaning up my mess, despite the fact that he moved all of my stuff without asking, and he is constantly leaving messes all over my house. And I'm so sick of it, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My brother has always been an entitled brat. He has lived in my house, the one that my mom and I bought and renovated, for almost 5 years now. He didn't start contributing to the household bills until about 2 years ago, and he makes sure to throw that in mine and my mom's face every month as if it's some kind of big favor. He has always complained about living here and how miserable he is because he's treated so poorly. He is treated like a prince by my mom and says the house is always such a mess. His room used to be our studio space where my mom and I kept our workspaces and supplies. I'm a designer and my mom is an artist. When he moved in, we turned our living room into a makeshift office for ourselves, so our supplies are kept on various shelving units in our living space. My brother has always complained about how cluttered and dirty the house is, and how he hates living here and all this other garbage. I've told him repeatedly that if he doesn't like it, he doesn't have to live here. He said I should accommodate him instead because he's family, and family should respect each other. It's a small house and we are doing our best with what little space we have, but he says it's embarrassing that we don't even have a space for a couch or a TV. But in reality, we used to have one until he moved in. 2 months ago, he announced that he is being forced to move in with his girlfriend because he can't live like this anymore, because my mother and I are so awful for asking him to help us with bills and have the audacity to have our workspaces in the living room. Since he informed us of this, he hasn't packed a single box, and he refuses to give me any kind of time frame for when he's going to move out. But I have overheard that he's telling his dad that he expects to move out in September. Today, I came home to a bunch of stuff, including kitchen items like sodas and snacks, all stacked up in my room and on my work desk, which had my laptop and my design drawings on the tabletop. I was confused and annoyed because I was afraid they had been crushed. I asked my mom if she did that, and she told me it was my brother. I went to him to ask him why on earth he did that, and that I didn't appreciate him moving my stuff and potentially ruining my work. He went off on me, saying that he made an executive decision, all to just finally clean things up. I laughed when he said that, because he has his own bathroom, and the largest bedroom too, and they're both completely filthy. He decided my mom's and my things needed to be allocated to our spaces, and kept out of the communal spaces like the kitchen and dining area. His logic was, since I'm the only one who consumes certain sodas and snacks, that they need to be kept in my room. None of his foods or drinks were taken out of the kitchen too, by the way. Anything that he didn't deem worthy of being in the communal spaces, he just tossed into a pile on my mom and mine's desk or in our rooms. Mind you, his shoes, moving boxes, and bags are all over the hallway. My mom and I always have to step over his stuff when we walk by his room, and we never move anything. I told him he needs to respect our things and our space, and he said it's not for me to dictate. I said yes it is, it's my house, but he wouldn't hear it. He screamed at me, saying I had to thank him for cleaning my mess, and that I better apologize for being so ungrateful. I reminded him that he's moving out, so why would he be so bothered about how my house looks? I told him I can't organize anything until he moves out, and he just lost his mind, saying, "How dare you? I guess you just can't wait for me to leave." I just rolled my eyes, and I told him that not everything I say or do is a personal attack on him. He was then screaming at me, saying that my supposed power trip is my way of treating him like garbage. I got fed up at that point, and I walked away to avoid losing my cool. It takes a very deluded person to make demands and set rules that don't even apply to him, especially in someone else's home, and I'm honestly so blown away by his entitlement. Yeah, your brother sounds like a real piece of work. For context, this guy's 25 years old. Like seriously, this guy's completely out of line. He is mistreating your home as well as your mother in the process. This is completely unacceptable, and he really needs to be put in his place. Like, I'm honestly really surprised you haven't tried to evict him at this point. Like, give him a notice and say, okay, you gotta go in this many days. Because he is being awful. He's moving your stuff around. He refuses to clean up after himself. He's leaving all this stuff around the place, and he's just being disgusting. Like, if I was in your shoes, I would be so excited for him to move out. Like, seriously, good riddance riddance and don't let the door hit you on the way out. So hopefully this situation gets better before it gets worse, because your brother sounds like an absolute jerk, and I would not want to deal with him in the slightest if I was in your shoes. I've decided to cut my sister out of my life, and now my mother no longer wants to talk to me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. From a young age, my relationship with my sister, who is nearly 2 years younger than me, has always been rocky. We never truly connected as friends, and her resentment towards me started early. She would belittle and embarrass me because of my weight, my introverted personality, and limited circle of friends, while she effortlessly fit into the popular crowd as a pretty and skinny model. I remember when we were kids, when our mothers sent us to our grandmother's house, which was a short 10-minute walk away. Instead of walking with me, my sister would intentionally walk ahead, ensuring her friends didn't see her associating with me, as she deemed me a loser. This hurt me deeply, as it reinforced the notion that she considered herself superior to me. Our parents' handling of the situation was disheartening. Despite her hurtful actions, they rarely held her accountable, leading to many unjust punishments for both of us whenever a problem arose between us. I felt like the victim in these situations, but somehow ended up being grounded alongside her. As I grew older, I made the personal decision to become an atheist, which was a secret, but she used to steal my diary books and open my Facebook account behind my back just to read what I'm doing, and then she would snitch it to my parents later on. She saw it as an opportunity to continuously undermine me, using any chance to report my actions to our parents. In her mind, it was my punishment for abandoning our religious beliefs. Though she wasn't overly religious herself, it seemed like she was just looking for reasons to bully me. One incident that became a breaking point in our relationship was when I had a minor accident a month ago while I was in the back seat of an Uber. I felt some pain in my neck and decided to see a doctor, which my sister ridiculed me for, accusing me of being a drama queen and just seeking attention. Her lack of concern for my well-being and her cruel remarks hurt me deeply. When I confided in our mother about the incident, she didn't address the issue between us, but rather scolded both of us without considering the pain her words had caused. Realizing how toxic my sister's behavior had become and how she never showed any support or sympathy towards me, I made the difficult decision to cut her out of my life entirely. This decision caused my mother to stop talking to me as well, believing that as the older sister, I should be the one to let go and be the better person. I had always been willing to financially support my family, including my sister, because I earned more than her and wanted to treat them well. However, she never appreciated my gestures and instead took advantage of me, expecting me to pay for her expenses without any gratitude or reciprocation. Moreover, my sister also made disparaging remarks about my fiancé, who is a foreigner and doesn't understand our language. Her disapproval of my relationship and her constant negative comments took a toll on me emotionally. I find myself torn between the desire to maintain a relationship with my family and the need to protect myself from the toxicity of my sister's behavior. It's a challenging situation, and I often wish for a resolution that would allow me to be happy without feeling emotionally drained. This decision is very hard for me, but I can't see a better solution. She never apologized to me. When I realize I was not nice to her, I always get her a gift and start small talks with her. I am also not good at saying I'm sorry, but I find a way to make her feel good. She never did that. Instead, she would accuse me of needing to go to therapy because I'm mentally sick and I need a doctor. She says I'm too sensitive and I shouldn't make a big deal out of some words. As long as it's not actions that hurt me in my life, I should be okay with whatever she says to me. I mean, am I exaggerating here? How am I supposed to convince my mother that this is best for me and my mental health? What should I do? First off, I totally understand that this is a really hard decision. Your sister is incredibly toxic towards you. Everything you've described seriously fits the bill. Like, she is just being straight up awful. She's bullying you, she's belittling you, and it sounds like she's done this your entire life. So truly, I don't blame you for being like, no, I'm not taking this anymore. I mean, imagine the alternative in this situation. Imagine just saying, you know what, I'm gonna bite my tongue again for another 27 years and just put up with all this garbage from my sister. I know if I was in your shoes, I would not want to deal with this either. I would put a hard boundary and say, you know what, unless you change, this just can't work out. And I'm so sorry that your mom is no longer talking to you. She honestly kind of seems like part of the problem. She yells at both of you instead of correcting your younger sister. So with whatever you decide to do, hopefully this all works out for you. Because yes, your mental health is important, and it sounds like your mom and your sister are not helping in that regard in the slightest. My direct director said that I need to prove myself still if I want to get a promotion. And when I heard this, I was so mad that I started applying for other jobs. And as a result, I got a job that gave me $22,000 more a year and set me up on a better career than this previous job could ever give me. Here's what happened. So 8 years ago, I used to work as a business analyst for a large multinational construction materials company. I was a good employee and they were a great employer. I had been given 2 promotions in my time there and been moved to several domains in the IT department, and I learned a lot. A role came up to be a senior business analyst within a new domain, and for various reasons, I was denied the promotion. And this was not a big deal. I understood the reasons, I really did. I wasn't bitter, and a more deserving external candidate 100% got the position. I was still given the opportunity to work in that domain. It was a great learning opportunity. A few successful projects later in the new domain, I asked if I could organically be promoted to a senior business analyst. And by successfully deliver, I mean my business partner going to another director in IT who had a stake in that domain. So I had definitely done good, if not great. My manager spoke to my director and the response was that I need to prove myself. When I heard this, I just had to laugh. Now don't get me wrong, my director was a great guy. He did, after all, promote me twice and gave me the opportunity to learn all these various new domains of the business. This is nothing against him, but this explanation absolutely enraged me. I would have been satisfied with, oh, there's no budget this year. Or if he just said, I don't think I'll get approval for an in-place promotion. Human resources was one of the domains I supported, so I know how things go. So I kept learning the new domain and started applying for various jobs outside the company. It took a few months, but one role finally clicked in. Now, my current job at this company was $88,000 with a 15% bonus that was paid annually. And this new job was $110,000 with a 30% bonus paid quarterly. The director wanted me to prove myself. Well, I just proved my worth to another company. I got a $22,000 raise on my base and doubled my bonus percentages. My manager then comes to me and asked, so was there anything we could have done to keep you here? Like maybe make you a senior business analyst? So I said to them, well, I only started looking because they said no to being promoted. Otherwise, I was and still am very happy here. But unfortunately, the money is hard to turn down. In hindsight, I'm glad they denied me the promotion. I would have never left that company otherwise, and I would have completely missed out on my current career trajectory. This is actually a really cool story and a nice lesson to learn. Sometimes you don't get those jobs that you're really looking for because a better one is literally around the corner. Because this guy had a chip on his shoulder and started applying for other jobs, he literally got a $22,000 raise. And that's honestly fantastic. So I guess the moral of the story is that maybe just because you don't get a job, it doesn't mean that there's not something way better waiting around the corner. And if I was in this guy's shoes, I absolutely would start applying to other jobs, especially with how much he already did prove himself. Because if the director really doesn't think that I've proved myself after working so hard and doing all this work, then they don't deserve my valuable contribution to their company. I just found out my fiance cheated on me 2 years ago, and now I'm absolutely devastated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. This literally just happened, so please excuse any ramblings. My fiance and I have been together for almost 6 years. We moved in together after a year of dating on our own, and then when I got pregnant in 2021, we moved in with my parents to save up for our place and get help with my son. 5 months after my son, I got pregnant again, so we now have 2 sons together, one that's 5 months old and one that's 15 months old. Things have been great. Obviously, we have disagreements here and there, but he's very involved. We live in my family house, and my siblings have moved out already, so there's plenty of room. About 3 months before I got pregnant with my first son, I miscarried very early at 5 weeks. The day after, his grandmother passed away. She basically raised him, and we have been trying for a baby. So needless to say, this was a hard time for him. So when he was invited to a bachelor party around the same time in Mexico, I actually encouraged him to go. I knew I couldn't travel, and I knew he definitely could use a vacation. He came back, and like I said, things were all good. Well, fast forward to today, and I'm home with the kids when he calls on his lunch break like he does every day. We talk, and after a while, I need to feed one of the kids. So we say our usual, I love you and I'll talk to you later. Basically, I had my headphones on, so I didn't hang up and neither did he. And that's when he immediately started talking to his coworker, saying something like, oh, there's a lot of girls outside today. And just because he can't do anything doesn't mean he can't look. And then he goes into a story about how when he went to Mexico for the bachelor party a few years back, they had some girls staying next next door at their Airbnb, and they were down to party. And basically, he went back to get cigarettes with one of the girls, and she came on to him, resulting in them hooking up. Right after he said that, he realized he was still on the phone and then hung up. I called back and told him I heard it all. He obviously is trying to contact me, but I don't even know where to go from here. Like I said, things have been great in our lives, but now I'm just in complete shock. Do I walk away? When I said that I heard it all, he just said he was just talking garbage. What should I do? This is awful. First and foremost, I'm so sorry this happened. Like seriously, talk about throwing a wrench in the wheel. This guy literally went on that trip to Mexico, something that you encouraged him to go to, and then he just straight up cheats on you. Like what an absolute jerk and dirtbag. Like does he not realize he has 2 sons with you? He just threw all of that away right in an instant. I'm so sorry this happened. You really do not deserve this kind of situation, especially your sons. I mean, did he even think about them when that was going on? Clearly not. I mean, this guy is a complete dirtbag. And it also doesn't help the fact that he so casually talked about this infidelity. Like he's just bragging to one of his coworkers about what happened. Like if he was trying to hide what was happening, he did a really poor job. So all in all, with whatever you choose to do, I just want to say I'm so sorry you're going through this. You do not deserve this in the slightest, and your fiance is an absolute dirtbag. An entitled Karen tries to lie on her resume during an interview, stating that she should have my job, while also lying about all of her work experience at a previous company I worked at. So I decided to get some revenge by exposing her for the liar that she really is. And I've never been more satisfied to put someone in their place in my life. Here's what happened. So I'm one of the heads of sales and marketing for a major property developer with 10 years of experience in the industry. Several of those were spent at a large competitor's company. We'll call them Money Homes, that's not their actual name. They're considered the epitome of luxury due to the high price tag. And this will be important later on. My team covers all of the capital and a very large portion of the country. Now, since we have only recently opened up, we are launching new developments for which we don't have enough staff for. So today was going to be an interview day. Normally, for those kinds of positions, the person would be interviewed by the sales manager for that particular development, as well as the sales coordinator and sometimes one of the sales directors. Since it is a bit of a track for the sales director to come in for the interview, Human Resources asked me to step in as new employees will be reporting to me anyways. So fast forward and we have 8 applicants waiting to be seen. The first few interviews go really well, but nothing super special. But that is until we meet interviewee number 4. We'll call this person Sarah. Sarah is not her real name. Before she comes into the room, she's sitting in the waiting area with other applicants, and I can hear her go on and on about how she pretty much has the job in the bag simply because she's overly qualified, and the other guys are wasting their time, which is honestly a huge first mistake. Then I can see her shuffling through papers at the administration desk, which was left unattended, which is also a second mistake. She still doesn't realize that her office is behind a Venetian mirror. I can see her, and she cannot see me. She hears the admin come back in and scurries away back to the seat. It's now her turn for the interview. She comes in, hands me a copy of her resume, and sits down opposite of myself and 2 other members of my team. I look at her resume with a slight half smile, which I think she took as a good sign. So she goes off talking about her major accomplishments at different employers. She tells us that she's actually more interested in being hired for another position at our company, which she reassured me by saying that she's more qualified than our current employee. She then starts spewing out figures of our marketing campaigns, which have not even yet been published, and advises me on the results we should expect and what our next move in terms of marketing should be. I advise her that the only positions currently open are for the sales staff, but because I was curious, I asked her which job she specifically was interested in. She mentions, and I'm not kidding when I say this, that she wants to be the sales and marketing director. She literally wants my job. And when she said this, I was honestly blown away. My coworkers both look at me in waiting, so I decide to just play along. I've asked her what makes her more qualified than our current director. She comes back to the marketing figure points and asks me outright, I mean, how many applicants are able to predict to a certainty what results you'll achieve? And then she leads into a major point on her resume. She mentions the company Money Homes, the one I spent a lot of time at. So I started asking a little more about her position there. What was her area of responsibility, how long she was working there, etc. She starts off telling this long rehearsed story of how she started there as a negotiator a few years back and worked her way up to associate director, and how she eventually became sales and marketing director, but is looking to leave, so discretion is of the utmost importance. At that point, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I really wanted to let her carry on, but I just burst out laughing and I asked her to leave. She just gets very confused and starts asking what she said that had offended me. With the biggest grin on my face, I then said to her, "It's one thing hearing you talk down to other applicants when you're supposedly looking for upper management positions, or even watch you steal confidential information from the administration desk." And as I said that, I was pulling the 2 pages out of her hand, which were literally our marketing reports. I then said, "And now you're telling me and my colleagues that you can do my job better than me by lying to me about your experience?" When I said this, she gets offended and starts going off on me that I know nothing about her and she did not lie about her experience, and how would I know about that anyways? I look at her and I say, "Ma'am, the reason I know you're lying is because I was the sales and marketing director at Money Homes, and this was specifically during the years you've described, and not only do I know that you were not in a management position, I know that you were not even part of that department. The department was made up of 42 employees, all of which I knew by name. I recommend that if you did actually work there, you contact your director, as I will be filing a grievance against you for stealing confidential documents from their main competitor." When I said this, her face went incredibly pale. She turns on her heels, rips her resume out of my colleague's hands, and runs out of the door. And honestly, I can't wait to see if I'll be hearing from her or Money Homes anytime soon. Wow, that is honestly a crazy story, and the payback in this situation is so well deserved. This lady really had the audacity to seriously start criticizing the other applicants, but also go about stealing confidential information. Like, she straight up stole stuff off that desk and thought she was being slick by bringing it into the interview. Not even to mention the fact that she lied on her resume and basically insulted the person right in front of her that she would be working for. I mean, she practically hit bingo on all the things she shouldn't have done. So good for the original poster for standing their ground and putting this weird applicant in their place. They were very clearly lying on their resume, and their actions and lies were absolutely inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I broke up with my ex-girlfriend a year ago, and now after reflecting on it, I seriously regret it. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. So it's been about a year since I ended a 5-year relationship with my ex-girlfriend. Reflecting back, we did share a good relationship, but at the time, I needed more from her, while she seemed hesitant to move forward. Now, a year later, I've come to realize what I lost. She was the kindest person I knew. She had a shoebox of medical supplies in her car boot in case she ever came across an injured animal. She was also so brave. One time, we were on a date, and she got involved when a man was pestering a girl. She ended up bringing the girl over to our table, and I didn't even notice there was a problem, and honestly thought my girlfriend was being dramatic until I heard the other girl's side of the story. But she was always so observant with other people's feelings. She was generous, always turning up to visit with something that reminded her of me. I honestly could sit here for hours writing about her, and yet when she was mine, all I was fixated on was her shortcomings, which in hindsight weren't really that bad at all. Our relationship ending was due to a conflict over her job. She had a care job that she loved, but it was really low paying. My father's company offered her a much higher paying job that required no qualifications, and I couldn't understand why she wouldn't take it. At the time, this infuriated me. How could you not want an opportunity like this? I mean, I didn't stop. My dad and sister even got involved at a family dinner, and my sister took it too far and said her job was one of the lowest paying jobs someone could have, and she should aspire for more like I do. Even bringing up her ex, who she said was broke, and how ending it with him made her life so much better. My parents agreed with this, and the tension was crazy. My girlfriend was distraught, yet I felt happy. I felt justified that my family agreed with me, and maybe she would finally see sense. This argument happened, and I was so angry with her. I wanted us to buy a big house, and in my head, her saying no to the job meant that we couldn't do that. I made a regrettable decision during that holiday. I ended up spending some quality time with a girl I met on a night out. My girlfriend discovered this a month later, and I chose that moment to end things with my girlfriend. I handled it poorly, acting distant and very cold, believing it would be better to cut it off quickly than to drag it out. She made a final drunken call a couple of months later, but I ignored them, again thinking it was better to cut ties rather than giving false hope. In retrospect, I find myself feeling like a stereotypical villain in a movie. I am not innocent in this matter, sure. I was influenced by my family's opinions about about ambition and compatibility, but I willingly agreed. Now with a clearer perspective, I see my sister's supposedly glamorous life built on wealth isn't necessarily fulfilling. Sure, she has money, but she seems miserable. My ex was ambitious, but not ambitious enough to be a millionaire. She wanted a family. She used to say that she wants a house just so she can host family at Christmas. Meanwhile, my family wants a bigger house just to impress people. How could I be so blind? I'm now dating a girl who makes about $70,000 a year. My family would love her, but now I'm taking this as a bad sign. She would probably be sick if she came across an injured animal. She would probably be annoyed by a girl coming over to our table on a date. She hasn't offered to pay for one thing on a date, and yet my ex-girlfriend, who makes so much less than her, would always offer to pay. She was just born into a rich family, and somehow that is all it takes for her to be an upgrade. I wonder now if this experience is a lesson I needed to learn. Am I going to end up miserable in a big house with a wife that has aspirations similar to my sister, while my ex is probably going to find someone who didn't need to learn this lesson? I'm not seeking sympathy. I'm simply venting my thoughts. I know I'm a bad person in this. Is it too late to fix things? We broke up in November, and the thing is, I know that she's kind, and she would always talk to me if I tried, but I don't want to take advantage of that. Getting back with me would mean dealing with my family. I'd also be embarrassed that I've spent the year pretending I'm so much better off. What should I do? Honestly, you need to leave your ex-girlfriend alone. You do not sound like a good boyfriend, and you don't sound like somebody who is mature enough to be in a relationship. Like, you didn't break up with her because your family didn't like her. You broke up with her because she caught you cheating. Like, she had every right to think that she could trust you, but you threw that out the window when you went out one night and just met a girl. Like, seriously, that's not okay. You threw away 5 years of a relationship just to have a one-night stand. And in my opinion, your ex-girlfriend deserves so much better than you. Like, if you really think about it, this original poster is seriously trying to justify cheating on their ex. He's also basically treating his partners as accessories or status boosters. Like, you really seem like you only care about money in this situation. So honestly, you're a jerk, and you really need to leave your ex-girlfriend alone. She's a lot better off being away from you, and the way you acted is completely and utterly atrocious. And she deserves so much better than anything you could give her. Today, I'm pretty sure I just ruined a future wedding after I had a weird encounter with a man and a woman in my shop. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So to start things out, I used to work retail at a year-round costume store, and we would definitely get some pretty interesting customers. I was closing on a random Friday night, and about an hour before we were going to close, a regular customer walks in with a guy. I happen to know from past experience that this customer was a lady of the night. The guy came in with this huge black duffel bag. The store was a mom and pop shop and had a very strict policy about not carrying large bags or purses around the store. And this is all just to help curb shoplifting. I asked the guy to either take it back out to his car or leave it up front with me. Now, he was kind of squirrely, but after some back and forth, he finally agreed to leave the bag up front, but told me that he had a lockbox inside of it with some loose diamonds. He didn't want to leave it unattended. He pulled out the lockbox to show me, and since it was small and would be cumbersome to get into, I told him it was fine to carry it around the store with him. I then found out from the woman that they were going to be driving out of town to get married. They were stopping by the store so that he could buy her a wedding dress. We didn't sell wedding dresses, but I did tell them that we have some really cool corseted dresses if she wanted to take a look at those. She went to do that while the guy wandered around with his lockbox in hand. He was constantly going on to me and other employees about how rich he was. He also told us in addition to being a diamond dealer, he was also an astrologist that worked for NASA. After trying on a few dresses, she finally found one that she liked and brought it up to be checked out. The dress rang up to about $180. When the dude saw the price, he completely lost it, and an argument suddenly ensued. After about 10 minutes of arguing with him, she decided to go back and get a different dress, but she reminded him that they also needed a ring and that he should pick up something from the costume jewelry while she found a new dress. I showed him some of the rings, and he ended up picking out one, but when I told him it was $12, he asked me to show him something cheaper, and he eventually settled on a $2 ring. I told everyone to go ahead and start on their closing duties while these two finished up shopping. About 20 minutes after closing, she finally came up with a $40 vintage style dress. After a little more arguing, he finally agreed to pay for the dress. However, she also wanted a pair of shoes and flatly refused to leave without them. She was wearing a ratty pair of canvas tennis shoes, and he kept insisting insisting that they would look great with a dress and that she didn't need shoes. They continued to argue, and by that point, we were coming up on almost half an hour after closing. My coworkers and I were supposed to be clocking out, and I still needed to close the drawer. Sick of listening to them arguing and wanting to make staying open later as worthwhile as I could, I told the guy that since he had a case full of diamonds, surely he can afford to pay for the shoes. The guy then got angry, grabbed his bag, and stormed out. She ran out after him, dragged him back into the store to pay for the dress and ring. She then had to buy the shoes herself. I then wished her the best of luck and they were on their way. After they were gone, I locked up and finished closing. About 15 minutes later, when I was leaving, I noticed that they were still arguing in the parking lot. And I'm pretty sure at this point that wedding absolutely didn't happen. That is a really strange way of planning for a wedding. First off, this guy's crazy. There's probably no diamonds in that lockbox, and I can guarantee you he doesn't work for NASA. Like, that's just insane. I mean, these people are shopping at a costume shop just to get a wedding dress and a ring. Like, are they getting married in Vegas or something like that? Like, what is happening? I mean, the guy was bragging about being this rich guy with all these diamonds, and yet when presented with a $12 wedding ring, he's like, oh no, let's go with a $2 wedding ring instead. Like, this guy's clearly delusional. So I personally don't think that wedding's happening either, to be completely honest. I don't think these two are a good match for one another, and the potential husband in this situation is just straight up lying. My manager didn't believe me when I told them I had laryngitis and forced me to come in and work with children at the after-school program that I run. So I decide to maliciously comply, and I show up to work with a mask on and surgical gloves. Here's what happened. So I want to start off by saying that this happened almost a year ago. I don't work there anymore, so I honestly feel pretty safe posting this. I used to earn some pocket money as a tutor, working with kids in an after-school program. Last fall, I got the flu. I was coughing, hacking up a lung, I was sneezing and had a fever. I was definitely sick and definitely contagious. The problem was I had also developed laryngitis, meaning that I couldn't call off work because I couldn't speak. I texted and emailed my boss at 9 o'clock in the morning just to let him know what's going on. My shift, by the way, started at 4 p.m. 4 hours later at 1 p.m., they replied by saying, sorry, we can't find someone to take over for you. I guess you'll just have to come in then. I sat there panicking because I didn't want to get any of the kids sick, and I didn't want to make myself worse by working with kids. I begged them to reconsider, but no dice. I texted coworkers seeing if someone would trade shifts, but I had no such luck. Then I remembered an interesting policy. Tutors were required to be there 20 minutes before their first student arrived so they could get the area ready with needed materials, read over notes from previous sessions, set up their table with school supplies, etc. I also remembered I was the first person scheduled, meaning that when I got there, I would be the only person there besides administration. I purposefully didn't take any medicine for the rest of the day. My symptoms went from annoying to very bad. I was hacking, my eyes looked glassy, I was extremely pale, everything was going wrong. I put on several masks and I changed my clothing and put on 2 layers of surgical gloves. There's no reasons to get the kids sick, even though they're probably the ones to give it to me in the first place. Then I walked into the administration's office sounding like I had the plague. A perfectly timed sneeze and coughing fit hit me just as I approached the door. Her office was quite long, so I never got within 10 feet of her. She still looked panicked as I croaked out, stating that I was here. Amazingly, she found a way to take over my students that day, and I was out of the building in less than 5 minutes. And honestly, overall, I'm just glad I don't work there anymore. Yeah, your former employers sound absolutely awful. Like, seriously, these people are just lazy. They could have easily taken over your class, but they didn't want to do it because they didn't want to find a replacement. And literally, that is management's job. That is their responsibility to figure that out in your absence. And you know what? Laryngitis and getting sick like that is no joke. And if you were to give that to your kids, that would absolutely spread like the plague. So seriously, good for you for putting these people in their place. They were being ridiculous and making you come in, and they seriously need to do better. Otherwise, more people that are good at their job like you are just gonna quit. Today, I messed up by accidentally buying a $200 bottle of wine without realizing it. And needless to say, now I feel incredibly dumb. Here's what happened. So about a week ago, I received a job offer pending my graduation next semester. I was very excited to receive this, as it's exactly the position I was hoping for post-graduation, and the pay is great. I saw the email with the offer while at my current job and decided on the way home to stop at my trusty local liquor store to buy a bottle of wine to celebrate. I was perusing the shelves for something that looked decent decent, but I was only willing to spend about $20 to $30 in my special occasion wine budget. My gaze found a wonderful looking bottle of Brunello, but it was about $70. I said to myself, screw it. I only get to celebrate my first big job offer once. I grabbed the bottle off the rack below before I had a chance to second guess myself. I head to the checkout and hand over the bottle and my ID. I should have realized my mess up right then and there. The checkout guy said, "This must be some really good wine." But instead, my conceited jerk self thought to myself, maybe he remembers me and knows that I don't buy stuff like this. I then told him I've only tried this wine once before at a nice Italian restaurant, but it's my favorite wine and I'm currently celebrating a job offer. On the drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about how excited I was to try the wine, but ended up deciding that I would save the bottle until graduation, just so that I could enjoy it with some friends and a nice meal. Flash forward to tonight, and I was scrolling through my charges in my bank account, and I saw a charge for almost $200 from the local liquor store dated last week. Immediately, in a panic, thinking that I was scammed, I run to where I store the bottle of wine, and I look at the label, and I see my mess up staring right back at me. The bottle I grabbed was not the bottle on display, but rather a 2016 with the same label. I then get on Google, not wanting to believe that I had messed up, and eventually I find the same bottle with a similar price online. I almost wish I had drank it already, because now that I know how much it was, I probably won't enjoy it the same once graduation finally rolls around. Wow, that's really crazy. First off, that liquor store was definitely trying to rip you off. They had a display that said $70, and then underneath it wasn't the proper product you were trying to buy. Like, that's really sketchy behavior. They were clearly trying to catch you in something, and it definitely worked. So sure, you weren't as observant of what you were buying, but at the same time, that is really terrible placement of products they're trying to sell. It's also a little bit deceptive in my opinion. Like, I'm sure there was probably a label on the bottle, but if it's going to be right underneath the bottle that you actually want to buy, then that, in my opinion, is super sketchy. So no, this is not totally on you. They were clearly trying to pull a fast one, and unfortunately, in this particular situation, it did end up working in their favor. My employee steals over $60,000 in loans from my business, causing my company massive losses, all the while this guy runs away thinking he got off scot-free. So I decided to get some revenge by turning the IRS against him, ensuring that everything he stole from me, he would now have to pay taxes on. And I've never been more satisfied by my revenge against this guy in my life. Here's what happened. So about 6 years ago, I started my own consulting business. I am a talented engineer, but I was and am sadly naive about the ways of the world. I came from a nice, loving suburban background, and my parents taught me that all people are fundamentally good inside, but they are not. To quote Dr. Cox, people are basically jerks coated in jerks with jerk filling. In most cases, I never got any sort of revenge. Eventually, I realized I'm being screwed over, and I would just fire the individual or cut the contract or stuff like that, and then take it as a lesson learned and move on with my life. Except for this one time when I hired a sales guy. For the sake of anonymity, we'll call this guy Tony. Tony is not his real name. Tony swept into my office on a cloud of amazing promises. He had a resume a mile long and many incredible, unlikely, yet somehow plausible stories of his great sales success in past organizations. He wanted to partner with me to take my company to a new level, make more money than we've ever made before. Even better, Tony didn't even want a salary. He simply wanted to be able to take out loans from the company until his big sales pipeline kicked in, and then he would pay it all back from his giant commissions. It was a total win-win for everybody involved. This sounded like an amazing deal. I mean, what a nice guy. He was clearly confident he could close a lot of sales. Or why else would he forego a salary in favor of taking out loans? Well, my dear friends, it's probably obvious how this story goes. Over the course of the next year, Tony supposedly almost made so many huge sales that are totally ready to sign, but somehow they never quite came through. And in that time, he took over $60,000 in loans that he would totally pay me back for as soon as his monster sales finally came through. But finally, after so many big promises with literally zero results, I finally became suspicious. And it's right about then that I realized that this guy was an absolute scam artist. So at this point, I needed to figure out what was going on. So I hacked open his company email account, and I saw that in fact, he had never even sent an email to a client ever. In fact, the only emails he ever sent were to me and other people in my business talking himself up. All of his leads were utterly fake. He had never talked to a single client a single time in a year. So after finding out that information, I fired him, and I set about seeing what sort of revenge I could extract. First of all, I went to my lawyer, who told me what I expected. No legal routes existed to go after him that wouldn't cost me way more than I wanted to spend on this revenge. Secondly, I hired a PI to dig into him. It turns out, surprise, surprise, that lots of people are after this guy. Former business partners, hospitals in Florida, some very big medical thing that he skipped out on, as well as several other people. It was finally my accountant who showed me the best possible way to get back at him without spending a lot of time or money. As I mentioned, he took out all of his pay from me as loans. Now that I had spoken with my lawyer and the PI, I knew I had essentially 0% chance of ever recovering that money from him. So I did the next best thing to benefit my business while also completely ruining him. I forgave the loans in their entirety. This had two huge impacts. First, I got a $60,000 tax write-off because the loans were now bad debt, which reduced my tax bill down to zero. A small but happy victory. Secondly, he now owes the IRS $20,000. You see, when I forgave the loan, it became income to him. Once it becomes income, full income taxes, including federal, state, payroll, social security, Medicare, etc., they all become due and payable. Now, because it's not payroll income, I don't have to pay the employee portion of the taxes. This means he owes the IRS $20,000 that he can never escape through bankruptcy or any other means. And I have the world's most vicious attack dog trying to get money from him instead of whatever minor debt collection efforts I could have mustered. And I'm honestly so satisfied by this revenge, and I really hope that it caused him a lot of problems. I can only imagine the frustration that must have come along with having an employee basically steal $60,000 from you. Like, that must have been a nightmare. And from the sounds of it, it really seems like this Tony guy really was stealing from a lot of people all the time. Like, this guy is the textbook definition of a con artist. He talks big and then says, hey, all I need to do is take out some loans and then I can start paying you back with some commissions. Like, this guy absolutely had what was coming to him. So honestly, good for the original poster for taking his stand and getting back at this guy by using the IRS against him. Because while you might not be able to chase down all that money, you can bet that the IRS will be all over him. And he is absolutely going to have to account for all that money that he basically stole. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. My entitled manager tries to blame me for their mistakes, but I refuse to take the blame, forcing them to own up to what they did. Here's what happened. So I worked in a place for almost 5 years and had this manager that had been there for maybe a year at this point. Now, this lady used to work in a university, so I guess she was used to younger people listening to what she had to say. Mind you, she had a lot of trouble in her personal life at this time, so I think that's what really brought the entertainment out of this situation. Now, at this point, I've had like 3 other managers, but they all keep leaving, so I pretty much have a new one every single year. So we have this huge activity that we have to do every 3 to 4 weeks, and I always had to do basically the worst part of it. You would usually have to finish up lunch early just to start, and you mostly had to stay late past your contracted hours on that day just to get things done. My manager pulls me aside and tells me that I talk too much while we are doing this task, and that it's distracting her and others from the work. I'm upset about them saying this to me, but like, whatever. I'll just keep my mouth shut so she has nothing to complain about. While we are doing the task, a couple of the guys I worked with started chatting, but I just keep my responses short and I don't initiate any conversation. I literally just put my head down and keep working like a good corporate slave. Now, they could probably tell something was up and they kept trying to joke around, but I just kept my reactions to a minimum. Then, all of a sudden, something starts making a sound and glass goes flying everywhere. We all look where it came from, and apparently my manager started heating a piece of equipment for sterilization, but forgot to refill the equipment with water. So the equipment just kept heating and heating until it eventually exploded. This equipment was also quite costly, mind you, and we had barely any replacements in sight. So after that happened, we all start cleaning it up. All of a sudden, my manager wants to pull me aside. She says we need to have a word in private. I'm confused as to why, but okay, whatever. As soon as we are in the other room, she turns to me and says that she made the mistake because I was talking. It's my fault she didn't follow procedure, apparently. At that moment, I was so angry because she was really going to attempt to lay the blame on me. So I told her, no, I've barely been talking. I did exactly as you asked, and it's not my fault that you broke the equipment. She She can tell that I was angry and said that we can talk in our one-on-one meeting. All the while, I remain adamant that I wasn't to blame. Fast forward a few months and she's asked me to help her with the task. She ends up making a mistake, but I tell her it's okay because this is equipment that we actually do have a spare of. She then screws up again and is starting to panic, and that's when I remind her that we have more spares in long-term storage. I then very smugly tell her it's okay, we all make mistakes, and I can finally say that she had some character growth here because she did not blame me and was actually appreciative towards me. Fast forward and eventually she actually became a really decent manager, and I was genuinely sad to eventually see her go. Yeah, that manager sounds like an absolute jerk. She clearly had some kind of plan set in place if she did mess up, and she was looking at the original poster to take the blame. She was literally just looking for a scapegoat for her stupid decisions, and that's not fair in the slightest. I can't stand people who do that. They make mistakes, they do stuff that they shouldn't, and instead of owning up to it and taking some kind of accountability, they look around for anyone underneath them or anyone else they could possibly blame. It's really unfair, and seriously, people like that need to change. And thankfully, it looks like the original poster's manager did change. They were able to become a decent manager for the most part according to the original poster, and that's honestly really good to see. But when it comes to the initial incident, good for the original poster for standing their ground. They know they didn't do anything wrong, and they were not about to be walked all over by some manager who was clearly trying to find someone to blame. Am I the jerk for kicking my brother-in-law's entire family out of my house, essentially making them homeless, all because they were slowly destroying my home? Here's what happened. My husband's brother, who's 35 years old, as well as his wife, who's 26 years old, and their 2 boys, moved in with me and my husband last month because they got evicted. Their boys are 4 years old and 3 years old. I never wanted them here in the first place due to past issues, but after speaking with my husband, we decided for the sake of the young children to give them a place to stay. Before they moved in, we set some ground rules, such as my brother-in-law must be actively job searching and that they must respect our space and clean up after themselves. Unfortunately, in the past month, they have begun to slowly destroy my home and my space without caring at all about how I feel about it. First of all, my sister-in-law is an extremely picky eater, so their family doesn't eat with us, which is fine, whatever, but they never clean up after themselves, constantly leaving dirty dishes, pans, crumbs, food stains everywhere. When I tell them to clean up after themselves, they begrudgingly do it, but it's never a job well done. Last week, one of the boys had gone to the bathroom on my very expensive couch, which I only found out about after there was a horrible smell when I was watching the TV. My sister-in-law is stay at home, but she's more like a stay in her room, doing God knows what while her 2 children run rampant around my house. In the last 3 weeks alone, her boys have colored on their bedroom walls, trashed my living room with their toys, knocked over half of my plant collection, and their whole family has turned my house into a zoo, all while contributing absolutely nothing. I have not been able to comfortably live in my own space for the past few weeks. My husband could sense my frustration, so he told me that he would have a talk with them and hire a maid to clean our house. Now things got a little bit better, that is until yesterday. I got home early from work and their family's gone. I think to myself, good, I can have some peace and quiet for maybe a few hours. I decide to go take a nap in our bedroom, only to find that my precious vase that my mother handmade for me was shattered on the ground. For some context, I lost my mom when I was a teen, and it was one of the last handmade items I had from her. I immediately knew it was one of the boys because there were toys inside my room and their tablet was on my bed. I was so angry. I ended up calling my husband, explaining the situation, and told him that they would not stay another day in our house. No questions asked. Then I went around the house picking up their dirty clothes, as well as their toys, papers, and I threw them outside into our lawn. When they came back, there was a huge confrontation between me and them. I listed all the disrespectful things they had done, and that because they had met none of the conditions outlined when they first moved in, I wanted them off of my property by midnight. I called their kids untrained dogs. They screamed back at me, calling me heartless, cruel, evil, saying that I'd make them homeless. Eventually, they did end up leaving after I said I would call the police. My husband is fully on my side, but I can tell that he does feel a little bad. My mother-in-law called me upset, asking me to take them back in after I forced them to sleep in their car last night. So I really need to know, am I the jerk for kicking my brother-in-law's entire family out after they slowly destroyed my home? No, you are not the jerk. I think there probably could have been a conversation leading up to this, or some kind of like intervention to say, hey, hey, you need to stop destroying my house or you've gotta go, or something like that. But you know what? Considering the circumstances, I don't blame you for being so angry and kicking them out. Like honestly, they did this to themselves. These parents completely let their kids run loose and do whatever they wanted. The parents were not involved, they were not cleaning up after themselves, and they were completely taking advantage of your kindness. And you know what? If your mother-in-law is really concerned about their kids not having a place to stay, then she easily could have stepped up and said, oh, come to my house. But they probably don't want that because they know how they're gonna act. And she also could have pitched in and helped them buy a hotel for the night. There are so many options ready for them, this is not even funny. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation, in my opinion. I think your extended family was being very toxic and they were taking advantage of you and not pulling their weight in the slightest. They completely disrespected your space and they did not follow any of your rules. So honestly, they absolutely had this coming. Am I the jerk for refusing to go on holiday with my cousin, all because she invited friends that I literally don't know? Here's what happened. My cousin and I organized a vacation to America last year in October. Everything was going smoothly. The hotel was booked, activities were planned, outfits were ordered, and plane tickets were purchased. Everything was fine, and I was looking forward to spending the holiday with my cousin. I was at home last weekend when I got a phone call at 1 in the morning. Mind you, my phone is on Do Not Disturb, so my cousin decided to call my aunt because I wasn't answering. My aunt then comes into my room and wakes me up to tell me my cousin wants to talk to me. So I call my cousin and I asked if everything was okay, and she tells me she has 2 mutual friends who heard through the grapevine that we were going to America, and they asked her if they could come along with us and stay at the Airbnb that we had booked, which my cousin told them I would pay for. I tell her that I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of these 2 people that I've never met before spending 2 weeks in the same house as us. I asked her why she would tell them it was okay without checking with me first, since I was paying for half of everything. She told me there was no problem with them staying with us because there were 2 spare rooms in the Airbnb. I asked her if she knew these people because she had told me that they were mutual friends. She said she met them at clubs through friends over the years and they had only spoken a few times. I told her I didn't feel comfortable with the idea of them staying with us because I don't know them and I don't know what they are like. She tells me that I don't have to worry about her friends and that I shouldn't judge them because I've never even met them. My response was that if I don't end up liking them, then I'm stuck in the same house with them overseas for like the next 2 weeks. Her friends are now expecting to tag along with us to all of the activities we had planned months ago, which I originally thought would just be me and my cousin. I've told her I don't know if I feel comfortable with them coming along, and she's told me it's too late because they have already booked their plane tickets and she had already told them that they can stay with us free of charge. She told me that if I don't like the idea of them staying with us, I can get my own place, although I have already paid for half the Airbnb, which cannot be refunded. I want to tell her that I'm not going if they are coming, and that they will have to find a way to pay for the rest of the Airbnb without me, but I can't get a refund. I am so frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. First off, you are not the jerk for not wanting to go on this holiday. Your cousin literally betrayed your trust. They basically said, oh, I'm gonna bring some friends along that I didn't discuss with you earlier, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like seriously, what is this cousin thinking? They are literally throwing you under the bus and forcing you to be a part of something that you don't want to be a part of. If I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. I don't know these people. I don't know them from anywhere. Like, are they trustworthy? Are they gonna steal from me or hurt me or my cousin? Like, clearly your cousin doesn't know them very well. Like, this honestly has bad news written all over it. Also, I wouldn't back out of this trip if I was in your shoes. I think it's safe to assume that the Airbnb is probably the cheapest aspect of this entire trip. So in my opinion, I would just find a new place to stay and not give up your vacation all because of your selfish cousin. But honestly, whatever you choose to do, I would just think about yourself in this situation, because your cousin clearly hasn't done that, and they would rather try and invite some random strangers to come along for this trip with you instead of trying to enjoy the plans that both of you already agreed on. Am I the jerk for yelling at someone when they stole my friend's wheelchair? Here's what happened. Around a couple of years ago, my friend by the name of Jackson is not their real name, was involved in a terrible accident. Despite being somewhat fine from the waist up, besides bruised ribs and a dislocated shoulder, he lost complete usage of his leg. So now he uses a wheelchair. Despite this, he doesn't take any garbage from anyone at all. He's like an iron wall. You can try and hurt him emotionally, but he will serve up a rebuttal straight on you. He does need help with stuff, so I do help him out on occasion. Even though he is progressing with therapy, he can stand for a tiny bit before needing to sit back in his wheelchair. wheelchair. Today, we had to go to the pharmacy so he could get medication. I told him I was going to get something to drink for us, and that if he needed me, he could just yell for me. After 5 minutes, I hear a scream from him, so I run over. What happened next absolutely enraged me. He was holding onto a shelf without his wheelchair. Looking, I saw a woman pushing her son on his wheelchair. Jackson told me what happened since I saw red and everything was kind of a blur. I basically acted out of instinct, and I was rushing over to them. I yelled and yanked the wheelchair. Jackson said that the kid hopped off, and it seemed like he purposefully fell onto the cardboard display. His mother cried that I shoved her kid off, but thankfully Jackson gave his side of the story since it was his chair in the first place. The pharmacy had cameras and they were escorted out of the building. After Jackson and I told a friend about this, she said that the kid was tired and needed the seat more. Now, we know that she is completely in the wrong, but I'm starting to think that maybe I reacted in the wrong way when it comes to this situation. So I need to know, am I the jerk for yelling at someone when they stole my friend's wheelchair right out from underneath him? No, you are not the jerk. This is like the least jerk thing you could have done. Those people seriously stole this guy's wheelchair. Like, let's think about that for a second. They saw a guy in a wheelchair and they thought to themselves, ooh, free wheelchair. Let's use that to get around. Like, I don't blame the kid for sitting in the wheelchair. I know when I was a kid and I went to pharmacies or other public places and there was a wheelchair over on the side, like near the entrance or something like that, I of course might sit in it just to try and play around with it. But the mother in this situation, the mother is completely to blame here. She is 100% at fault. She knows better. She knows that this guy was clearly using this wheelchair. She also absolutely heard this guy scream out and probably get really upset when his wheelchair was taken away. I mean, Jackson was holding onto the shelf trying to hang on for dear life. He literally can't walk, and you going over there literally was the right move. He needed help and he needed someone to be there for him. So of course you're not the jerk in this situation. The friend who's saying, well, the kid was tired and he needed the seat more. She is a complete moron, and I would ignore that altogether. There's no way that that kid was so tired that his mother would feel the need to steal someone else's wheelchair just so he can have a seat. Like, if that's the case, then maybe it's time to go home and get some rest. So no, obviously you are not the jerk in this situation. Your friend is already going through a tough transition in life as it is, and the last thing he should have to worry about is some stupid entitled Karen walking up while he's not looking, or when he's trying to like stand up and practice walking, just to take the chair right out from underneath him, basically leaving him stranded in this pharmacy. You did the right thing, and if I was in your shoes, I would not feel guilty in the slightest. An entitled jerk takes up my sister's handicap parking spot by parking his expensive BMW in our spot. But once he gets a ticket for parking in our handicap spot, this guy freaks out and says some horrible things to me as well as my family. So I decided to get some revenge on this guy by posting online the secret recording I made of his interaction with me and effectively ruining his reputation in our community. And I've never felt more satisfied to get revenge on anyone in my life. Here's what happened. So to start things out, my little sister, who is the sweetest girl in the world, is 12 years old but can't walk or communicate. Her mental age is about 6 months old. She obviously cannot attend a regular school, but since we live in a big city, there is a wonderful school for kids just like her. Even though we don't own a car since we don't need one, we got the city to put up signs in front of our house designating a 4-meter spot for wheelchair pickup and drop off for her school bus every morning and afternoon. The signs went up perhaps 2 years ago, and after the first week, we never really had any issues since most of our neighbors are wonderful and totally understanding of our designated spot. For some context, we live in a perhaps poorer community, though we are well off, but in our 9 years here, we've had nothing but great interactions with everyone in the neighborhood. Sadly, the neighborhood is gentrifying, and we're getting more self-centered people with their expensive cars actually honking at us while my sister gets loaded onto her school bus. This process takes about 4 minutes, but blocks our little street. And when they do this, it really upsets me, as well as the other sane people that witness this happening. Naively, we thought this would be the extent of our unpleasant interactions, but boy were we wrong. In September, we woke up like any other Monday morning to find a shiny BMW parked in our disabled spot. Now, it wasn't just partially in it, it was positioned perfectly to take up the entire spot. To make things worse, there were about a dozen other open spots on the block, and it's not like they were all vacated that morning, since we wake up at about 6 in the morning. We were absolutely baffled. I had seen this car many times since last July, and it was definitely the same car, since there aren't many burgundy sports cars in our neighborhood. It was usually parked about 20 meters south on our street, and we knew it belonged to a neighbor a few doors down. We did all the basics in this type of situation. We took a picture, we took down the license plate, and we called the police just to report it. The cops came by within an hour and wrote a big fat ticket. I believe it was for about $700 or some other kind of significant amount. Well, at around noontime, a smug, angry guy came knocking on my door, and it was right about then that I realized that this guy was gonna be a problem. Now, it was obvious that this was the owner of the car, so I made the quick decision to record the conversation on my phone. I opened the door, and before I could say anything, this jerk was laying into me. He accuses me of putting up those signs this morning just to get him in trouble. He goes on to say that disabled spots shouldn't even be a thing, that it's always empty, and that we should pay for his undeserved ticket, that it isn't even an inconvenience, since the spot next to his was free, and my sister could have just gotten onto the bus from there. Once he finished, I said okay, and I shut the door on his furious face. He rang the doorbell another 5 times before storming off. To my satisfaction, the recording caught everything clearly. In the evening, I told my parents what had happened, and I gave my dad a copy of the recording. Now, we have a tight-knit community for the most part, and there is a neighborhood Facebook group with about 3,000 members. My dad decided to post a summary of what had happened, along with the recording, and a picture of the car in our spot on the page. Well, once that was posted, there was an immediate uproar, with people saying that they would fight back. We were humbled by the feeling that our community was standing up for us, but we honestly didn't think anything would come of it. The next day, I leave the house to go to school, and I walk by this guy's car that's in his normal spot, and I notice that the front tire has been completely deflated. Upon further inspection, it was slashed, and as I said, our community is tight-knit, but I can't say I expected anything like this to ever happen. The guy must have seen the Facebook post, because he didn't come back to our house to complain or accuse us of anything. The following weeks were sweet. Whenever I saw him in public, people would go up to him and remind him that he was an awful human being. Fast forward to November, and his house had a for sale sign in the window. The house market had gone down by quite a bit. I'm always kind of curious about how much houses similar to ours are selling for compared to how much we paid for ours in 2010, so I basically knew what he had paid for in July. Once I saw the for sale sign, I rushed home and I checked the local house listings, and lo and behold, he was selling for $90,000 less than what it was going for in July. He clearly wanted to get out of the neighborhood. While his crime wasn't nearly worth $90,000, I must say that I don't feel bad. Worst case scenario, he sells that obnoxious car of his, which would easily cover the lost money. But since that incident, let's just say that we haven't had a single car parked in my sister's spot ever since. That guy is a grade A jerk. First and foremost, that was really good thinking of the original poster to record that interaction. I mean, that made all the difference in the world. This could have been a very long and drawn out situation if that wasn't recorded and posted online. Like, this guy that was complaining because he got a ticket seriously has some twisted morals. Like, handicapped spots are there for a reason. It is absolutely necessary in society, and anyone who thinks otherwise seriously has some twisted viewpoints. And while I think the destruction of property really was a bad idea, I think the public outcry and his loss of reputation really was well deserved. I mean, this guy just ruined his standing in the community, and he literally didn't have a leg to stand on. There was nobody on his side. So the fact that he had to sell his house for much less than what it was worth just to try and get out of that neighborhood is really funny to me. So good for the original poster for recording that interaction. It literally made the difference for that community, and now they don't have to deal with a jerk like that ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. My mother-in-law is supposedly setting a boundary that she's demanding that people have to show up to her house this Christmas this year. And at this point, we seriously don't know what to do. So Christmases in our blended family are going to be stressful, and I'm now figuring this out. My wife, by the name of Sarah, that's not her real name, is from the opposite coast from me. She moved here on purpose to escape the little area she grew up in. Her mom and dad split up in 2021 after 35 years of marriage. We have been married for almost 4 years. My family all lives within 45 minutes of a plane ride or a 2-hour car ride from each other on this coast. My sister and I both live in extremely destination-style cities. In addition, Sarah's brother lives in the same city as us. To make a long story short, my mother-in-law is supposedly setting a boundary that Christmas will be at her house this year. And I really use the word boundary quite loosely because I really think she's being manipulated manipulative. She is refusing to travel at all and says that she always travels for Christmas. Now, this has been true for the past 2 years. We did a blended Christmas at my sister's house in 2021 and a blended Christmas at my newly purchased home in 2022. Now, I honestly think that this is a power play by her mom and also ignores the fact that Sarah and I travel to see her at least twice a year. She lives far away from airports, so it's always a heavy lift, but we bear it because she is family. Logistically, there's basically 2 options for me and Sarah. We have 2 whole Christmases with both sides of the family, or we have 1 blended Christmas. My sister has a 7-year-old and a husband whose work deals in shipping, logistics, and delivery, so December is an absurdly busy month for them, and they functionally cannot travel. I also have a job that needs doing in December, and so does Sarah. I think we need to set some kind of counter boundary with her mom, or something like that, because honestly, at this point, we seriously don't know what to do. I don't think your mother-in-law knows what a boundary is, because what she's describing is literally a demand. She's demanding that you have to go to her house for Christmas. There's no way around it, and it's just the way things are. That, in my opinion, is very toxic, and that's not fair for anybody involved. And sure, she did just have a divorce that is probably wrecking her world completely, but in no way is the mother-in-law setting a boundary. Instead, she's just trying to tell people what to do. So I'm right there with the original poster. This really does feel like manipulation, if anything, and it's also very inconsiderate to everybody else. In my opinion, if the mother-in-law wants to be in some kind of Christmas party, she should travel to try and make it happen. It sounds like she lives the furthest away from basically everybody in the family, and it just seems a little bit backwards that she's not willing to travel to see everybody in the family. So no, I don't think you're wrong in thinking that this is weird, and if anything, maybe it's time for your wife to step in and try and intervene, because the way your mother-in-law is acting is a little bit strange, and it most likely has to do with the divorce she just had. My neighbor's cat was taken out by another neighbor's dog, and now she's wondering where her cat is, as well as whether or not we know any information. But as a result, we have not told her anything, and we have not told her what actually happened to her cat, and it's now been several months, and at this point, we seriously don't know what to do. So I had just gotten back from fishing for the day and was spraying off the boat. When I'm inside the boat on the trailer, my neighbor's back patio is visible over our fence. Now, I don't talk to my neighbors much, but my roommate absolutely does. And it's just the usual small neighbor talk. And she'll ask him every now and then to help out with some heavier labor yard work. I then hear her call out the wrong name to me. She says, "Hey Kevin, Kevin, is that you?" Now, my name is not Kevin, but my roommate's is. I say to her, "I'm sorry, no, my name is the original poster." She says, I've been trying to catch Kevin to ask him about my cat. She's been missing for a few days, and it's not like her to not check in for this long. Have you seen her?" I start asking her what the cat looks like, because our neighborhood has a lot of outside cats, and they're always in the yard. At this point in the conversation, my roommate has walked out the front door, which is around the corner of the house. Not visible to her, but I can see him. He hears the back half of the conversation as I'm telling her that I haven't seen her come through our backyard lately, but I will keep an eye out. At this moment, my roommate makes really wide eyes and slips back inside the front door like Homer Simpson in the bushes. But I think nothing of it because we're always just messing around like that. After I get done with my boat, I go inside and I start telling Kevin about the conversation with the neighbor, and he interrupts me and says, "I know what happened to her cat. It's not just missing. It's not coming back." Confused, I ask what he means, and he tells me that because we hadn't seen each other in a couple of days, he didn't have time to tell me. According to Kevin, while doing yard work the other day with headphones on, the neighbor's cat was sitting in the yard. After a while, he noticed a bit of commotion in his peripheral, and when he focused, he saw that another neighbor's dog had gotten out the front door while their owner went out back. The dog got a hold of the cat and made a complete toy out of it, if you know what I mean. Kevin said he saw the dog fully biting on the cat and shaking it around like a stuffed animal. Now, Kevin did not want to get involved so as not to hurt her, so he calls out to get the owner's attention, but it was already too late when the owner noticed and got the dogs back inside. Kevin said it was honestly too late as soon as it started. The owner started cussing up a storm, obviously infuriated by the situation, while Kevin just watches the entire scene in shock. The cat was completely lifeless. The dog owner says to Kevin, "Oh God, leave the door open for 2 seconds and this happens. Do you know whose cat this is?" Kevin, gazing at this cat that is no longer moving, says that he thinks that it's this lady's, pointing to our neighbor's house. She wasn't home at the time. The dog owner cussed a bit more and sized up what he was gonna do. This guy actually picks up a shovel, scoops the cat up, and puts it inside of a garbage can and then goes back inside. Now at this point, I'm absolutely flummoxed when he's done telling me. I then ask Kevin if he's going to tell the cat neighbor, and he says he's been thinking about it, but doesn't think that it's his place, and if it were him, he would rather just like to believe the cat got hit in traffic. About 20 minutes later, while doing some work in the backyard, she asked Kevin if he had seen the cat, and he tells her no, but he'll keep an eye out. It has been months now, and honestly, we're not sure what to do. This is seriously awful. Like, think about it. This is someone's beloved pet. Someone's pet who they really love and adore, and they take care of them, and this cat is probably another family member to this lady. Like, seriously, you guys need to tell her what happened. She deserves the right to know, and she deserves to know that, hey, the neighbor across the street was negligent with their dog, and this is what happened. I mean, what is going on here? You guys seriously are just gonna keep her out of the loop? You know the truth. Why would you not tell her? That is completely awful to just sit there and say nothing. Here she is, probably waiting day in and day out, trying to figure out where her cat went. And what did the owner of the dog do with this cat? He literally just threw it in the trash. There's not even the body of the cat to confirm her worst fears. This is such a terrible thing to do, and honestly, this is not okay. You guys are complete jerks for keeping her in the dark when you know the truth. And honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would have told her right away exactly what happened, because your neighbor absolutely deserves the right to know. An entitled Karen freaks out when she finds out her son is lower on the batting order than she feels he deserves. And I've never been more annoyed to be a volunteer coach for a baseball team in my life. Here's what happened. So this just happened yesterday, and I'm still flabbergasted by the gall of people. I coach my 9-year-old summer baseball team. If you know anything about Little League, you'll know summer baseball is only about staying active. There's no mandatory practices, no tournament, only 2 games a week over a 4-week span, so the kids get to keep swinging. It's basically the pickup version of organized Little League baseball. Last night was our second to last game, so we've been playing for 3 weeks. I start warm-ups 45 minutes before every game, and this has been known since before our first game. I put the lineup together 30 minutes before game time, because at this point, I should know who is and isn't going to be there. I knock the task out as early as possible so I can get back to warm-ups with the kids. And it's right about now that the entitled Karen of this story rolls in 20 minutes late before game time with her son. I had put him at the bottom of the batting order and had him sitting out on defense the first inning because I wasn't sure when I did the lineup if he was coming. There's this perception that the worst players on the team bat last. So seeing her son at the bottom of the batting order set her off. Mind you, her son plays on select teams, which is a pay-to-play advanced league, and doesn't necessarily mean you're the better player, and his dad coaches select. That means her son must be the best player on the team and should be batting higher in the order, right? Well, she definitely thinks so. She has her son thinking that too, because he was crying on the bench before the game had even started. She proceeded to try and argue with me in front of everyone that she had been on time for warm-ups the week prior and no one else on the team was there. So they came later last night because we weren't actually starting 45 minutes early like I said we would. First of all though, that's not true. Granted, I've missed 2 of the games, but when I'm there, I'm always an hour early and she is never on time. Secondly, her son skipped an optional practice I held simply because it was only a practice, so they're not taking the whole thing very seriously anyways. I pointed out that every other kid on the team had been here on time last night and was warming up. I wanted so badly to say, hey, this is a volunteer position. You want to set the lineup? You coach the next year. But instead, I had to placate her by saying it wasn't about her son's skill, because literally it wasn't. But it was about him being late for warm-ups and the fact that I'd already set the lineup. She proceeded to jump on the phone and start complaining about me, then hovered by the dugout the entire game. And honestly, it makes me realize that coaching is a thankless job, and Karens leech all the fun straight out of it. Yeah, that lady's being super obnoxious. If she wanted her kid to be higher up on the batting order, she literally just had to show up on time. Like, that's all she had to do. But instead, she wants to complain and be weird about it. Her kid's probably not even that good at baseball anyways, like, come on. So I don't blame you for being frustrated. This lady was being really annoying, and maybe next time if she wants her kid to be higher up on the batting order, she can come on time and try and take this seriously. Today, I messed up by serving a customer an entire wine glass full of soy sauce, assuming by mistake that it was actually red wine, and I've never been more embarrassed in my life. Here's what happened. So this actually happened a while ago, but has scarred me so much that I think about it years later every time someone orders a glass of red wine. When I was 18, I started working my first server job at a local family-owned Japanese sushi restaurant. It was pretty small scale, 10 to 12 tables, and I was the only server as they didn't get much business. The restaurant was owned by an old woman, but her son and daughter ran the restaurant by this point, although she still worked in it. They also all lived in a house nearby. They frequently transported things back and forth between their their house and the restaurant. They kept a lot of storage at their house, but also just took home food or supplies to use at their house. I worked there for a few months, and one night a table ordered a glass of wine. We keep the red bottles on a different spot in the restaurant compared to the whites, and we keep it in a fridge in the kitchen. I was busy, so rather than walk to the other end of the restaurant, I grabbed a nearly full bottle of wine on the end of the sushi bar, a spot I would learn later that they usually keep some of their personal items at. I poured the glass and brought it to the customer, who was a woman with her family. I was stopped by them a minute afterwards, and she told me her wine did not taste good at all. It was bitter and incredibly salty. Her husband said it didn't even taste like wine, but more like soy sauce. I exchanged puzzled looks with them and apologized and took the glass away and said I would open a new bottle just for them. I walked over to my boss, the son, who is a sushi chef, along with an old man who's part of their family. I told them they said the wine tasted bad, and they were dismissive and just told me to get a new glass for them. Then I mentioned how they said it also tasted like soy sauce, and my boss literally stopped rolling sushi and looked up at me with a horrified look on his face. He turned towards the old man and started speaking in another language, and the more they were talking, the more my stomach just sank. My boss tells me that the other sushi chef took an empty bottle of wine and filled it up with soy sauce just so they could take it home, but they left it on the end of the counter. He confirmed to me that I just served them a glass of soy sauce wine. I got them a new glass and explained what happened and profusely apologized. My boss then came over and apologized as well and took off all their drinks from the tab. They laughed it off and would continue to come back after that and make me feel so embarrassed by bringing it up every time. Now, anytime a glass of red wine is ordered, I am honestly completely terrified. That is a really funny story. Imagine that. You're just trying to do your job and work your job as an 18-year-old. You have this small sushi restaurant that you work at, and a couple order some red wine and you try and pour them a glass, but instead you pour them a bunch of soy sauce. First off, that must have been really gross. Like, you would probably know right away, yeah, this is not wine. This is straight up salty soy sauce. Listen, I love soy sauce just like the rest of them. Anytime I order sushi or Chinese food, I'm always putting soy sauce all over my food. It adds just a little bit extra to the already delicious meal, but drinking it straight literally makes me want to gag. That seriously sounds so disgusting, and I can only imagine how jarring that must have been to literally take a giant swig of that. But thankfully, they were good sports about it. They didn't freak out and they didn't cause a massive scene. So hopefully the next time you see a bottle of red wine on the countertop, you check with the other sushi chefs just to make sure it is what it says it is, because I'm sure that's a mistake you're definitely not going to make again anytime soon. An entitled Karen claims that I'm a terrorist and a communist, all because I had a Star Wars decal on the bumper of my car, and I've never been more blown away by someone's stupidity in my life. Here's what happened. Well, people, my faith in humanity has fallen just a little bit more today. Some people just have absolutely no clue on how to behave in society. This morning, I'm out and about picking up breakfast for the missus and myself. She prefers Taco Bell and I prefer Carl's Jr. The Monster Biscuits are absolutely amazing. I pull into the Taco Bell drive-thru, and as I'm ordering, another car pulls up behind me and just starts blaring their horn. I'm trying to finish up, but this woman just doesn't stop, all the while screaming out the window that I'm a terrorist and that I'm a communist. And I have no idea why she's screaming these things. I pull forward to the pickup window, and Karen is still screaming at me, but has given up on honking altogether. Maybe she even annoyed herself with it. The employee asked if I know this person, and I tell them I don't. She hands me my bag, and I leave the drive-thru, and the Karen follows me out. So I pull up to the exit and make like I'm going to turn right, but at the last possible second, I pull a left, and now she's stuck at the stop sign, waiting for her turn. I continue down the street, make a quick right into a bank parking lot, and wait there for a few minutes, hoping that she gave up. After about 2 minutes, she is nowhere to be seen. I decided that she probably went on her crazy day, and I just continued down the street. A couple blocks past the Taco Bell is my breakfast stop, Carl's Jr. I pull into the drive-thru. I had already ordered online for pickup, and I'm asked to park while they wait for the fresh tater tots and French toast sticks that I ordered. As I pull into my usual parking spot, this entitled Karen comes out of nowhere and returns into my area. She has spotted me and decided to peel into the parking lot and parked her car right next to mine. And it was right about then that I knew things were about to pop off. I roll up my window as she approaches, and she starts screaming at me again how I'm an imperial communist, that I need to go back to my own country, and that I'm a terrorist. I think she assumed I was Russian or something like that. I don't know. The manager of the Carl's Jr. comes out to give me my food. I'm an almost daily customer at this point, so he was probably coming out to shoot the breeze, even if just for a few minutes. He then sees this Karen going off on me. The manager then asks her what the problem is. This entitled Karen then starts ranting to them the exact same thing that she's been ranting at me the few moments that she's been there. I roll my window down to get my food, and I tell this Karen, what in the world are you talking about? I am not a terrorist. I've lived in the USA all my life, and I have no idea what you're talking about. She then explains herself. What about all those communist stickers all over your car? What's that language say, huh? And then it finally hits me. I'm a Star Wars fanatic. I drive a white 2019 Chevrolet Bolt, and it greatly resembles a stormtrooper helmet, so I have the Imperial logo on my tailgate. I have a decal that says the Emperor doesn't care about your stick figure family, with a TIE fighter and an AT walker blowing up some stick figures, as well as a Star Wars language that says honk if you can read this. I quickly explain it to her that I'm not a terrorist and that this is all Star Wars stuff, including the Star Wars writing, and how it's not any language on this planet or even in this galaxy. I really tried to reassure her. Thankfully, she realized her mistake really quickly. She sputters out a quick, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then jumps back in her car and drives away. I mean, honestly, some people are just straight up crazy. I'm not about to have a political message on my car because honestly, that's a good way to get it vandalized. Yeah, that lady was seriously off her rocker. First off, she didn't know who was in that car. The original poster could have been somebody dangerous. They could have been anybody. And this lady really walks up and says, "No, you're gonna have to hear everything I've got to say. You're a terrorist and a communist." Like, seriously, lady, you must either be really brave or really stupid. Like, if I saw someone's decal that said something I don't know, I am not about to pursue them in my car and start yelling at them about something I don't even know. I'm gonna carry on about my day and ignore them. Like, the way she was acting is a surefire way to basically get hurt. Something horrible could have happened to her if this was different circumstances. So seriously, good for the original poster for standing their ground and saying, you know what, this is weird and you're crazy. Because this entitled Karen was completely out of line, and there was no reason for her to call you a terrorist or a communist. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. An entitled Karen ruins my birthday after she starts to mock what I'm wearing, insinuating that my outfit is somehow offending her religious beliefs. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So this happened about a year ago, but it still hurts me to this day. I'm a 17-year-old female, soon to be 18 in a couple of months. My birthday occurs during the school year on Valentine's Day, but most of the time it doesn't bother me. This year it kind of did. For my sweet 16, my dad agreed to let me have a bowling party at the local bowling alley. And this was simple enough, but the only problem with this was that we had to postpone the party to a whole month later because our family had plans. Fast forward to the day of the party, and I was ready to go, but my dad was out, so the only person that could take me to the party that we were hosting was my mom, and she has a very large habit of being late. We ended up being 10 minutes late to my own party, and in doing so, I was already stressed, and there were 5 people already there for the party waiting for me. Once I got there, people were asking me where things go and stuff like that, and it was honestly all over the place. I almost had a panic attack, but after a few calm breaths and a talk with my ex, who was my boyfriend at the time, I managed to calm down. The party went well, and I got a lot of cool things for my birthday. One of my closest friends got me parts of a new costume that I was making. The rest was mainly to help me in my book writing and illustrating. After the party, we went home and had some family friends over. It was mainly a get-together for the parents. Knowing what I got from the party, my dad thought it would be a great idea to wear what I have for the costume that I was working on to show to the visitors. We did it just for fun. My dad and I are extremely close, so I knew that he wouldn't do anything to embarrass me. The pieces of costume that I got were a red jacket, a customized t-shirt with my original character on it, and the 2 pieces from the party, a pink wig and black and white wolf ears. I got all dressed up and showed up to show everyone, and a lot of people were really impressed by it. Well, everybody except for one person, and that is the Karen of this story. Karen was very strict with her religion. Now, we all believe the same things, except Karen was way more strict than my family ever was. Her own husband isn't even that strict. I mean, he jokes around with it just like my dad would. Karen was confused and even looked disgusted by what I was wearing. My mom explained to her that I was trying to dress like the character on my shirt, and keep in mind, this is my original character. But what Karen said in response was something that you definitely do not want to say to somebody. This entitled Karen says, "You shouldn't wear that. It goes against what we live for. Get all of that out of my sight, please. You shouldn't even try to dress up like that. I mean, where do you even think you would get dressed up like that for? When she said this, I was shocked and I was so hurt. I left from my room and went to the basement trying not to cry while watching my brothers play Super Mario Brothers. At the same time, I could hear my mom talking to the Karen about what she had said. I couldn't hear most of it because of my brothers playing their video game and also because I have tinnitus, which blocks my hearing with loud ringing sounds. And it's something that usually comes about when I'm stressed out. Once everybody left, I avoided being spotted again by rushing to my bedroom and finding a spot for my wig and my ears. The next morning, my mom calls me and my dad to the kitchen table to talk about what happened. She said that after Karen had left, she was getting spammed by this Karen with Bible verses about how not to judge a woman by her outer appearance to marry her. Karen was basically trying to say that I shouldn't go along with the world, but this character is literally my own original thing, and apparently this offended the Karen in some kind of way. The whole time my mom was talking about this whole thing, I was trying not to cry. Now, this wasn't the only time that this has happened. From that point on, every time my mom had to cancel plans on the Karen because she got called into work or anything like that, the Karen would send my mom a Bible verse and try to guilt trip her into not going to work. So now, me as well as one of my good friends, we get nervous every time this Karen gets involved with a group gathering. Apparently, I'm not the only one who gets bad vibes from this lady. My friends and I are also worried about being judged and criticized just for what we are wearing. And to this day, I still can't believe that my mom is still friends with this Karen. So what are we supposed to do? We see this Karen a lot of times going to the same church as us, and I honestly don't want to deal with her again, and I seriously don't know what to do. First off, this Karen's a complete idiot. The original poster literally did nothing wrong. They're just dressing up as a character that they made. There's literally nothing wrong with that. Like, can't this Karen just mind their own business and do their own thing? Why do they have to be up in other people's business and be like, wow, you shouldn't wear that. What's going on? Get that out of my sight. Like, no, lady, how about you leave? What are you talking about? And the fact that she was trying to justify her actions based off of Bible verses, like, first off, what an awful person. Like, seriously, anyone who uses religion to try and guilt trip other people or make other people feel bad just because they're different than you, those people are absolute jerks, and I can't stand people like that. It's obnoxious, it's uncalled for, and to me at least, it doesn't actually prove any point. If anything, when a person does something like that, just like the Karen in this story, it just proves how toxic of a person they really are. So to the original poster, I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. You didn't do anything wrong, you're just dressing up as your character you made, and it's clear that your friends have your back, and they wanted you to enjoy the outfits that they got you, as well as the props and the wigs, just so that you could bring this character to life. So if I was in your shoes, I would just avoid and ignore this lady, because the way she's acting is honestly awful, and you do not need that in your life. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay my mother-in-law just to babysit our toddler while we go away on a 5-day vacation? Here's what happened. My wife is turning 40 in 10 days. To celebrate, we're taking a 5-day vacation with just the two of us. It's the first time that she and I have been away like this as a couple since the birth of our son almost 4 years ago. We planned this trip months ago, and my wife asked her mom if she would be willing to come to our house and watch our son while we are away. My mother-in-law agreed right away. My mother-in-law is also in her early 60s, but she doesn't have a real job. She will do cleaning for her brother who owns a bunch of rental properties, and he pays her in cash. So it's not like she has a schedule she has to clear to stay with our son for a few days. Last weekend, my wife called the mother-in-law to talk to her about our trip and ask if there's anything she will need or want us to stock up with in the house as far as food or necessities. During the conversation, she said that she will need about $100 per day from us. This is the first time she ever brought up wanting to get paid to watch our son. My wife was caught off guard and just kind of agreed to it. But when she got off the phone and told me about it, I got upset. I told her that she is taking advantage of the situation because she thinks we have no other options. I told her that is BS that she sprung this on us so close to our trip, and I don't think we should pay her anything. I said that I would call my parents and see if they could watch our son instead. My wife told me that my mother-in-law wouldn't ask for that sort of thing unless she needs the money, and that adding $500 to our vacation trip isn't that much of a big deal. I told her that it's not about the money to me. It's about her being sneaky and manipulative. I called my mom and asked her if they would be willing to watch our son instead, and she jumped at the idea. Both my parents are recently retired, so they have plenty of free time and would love an extended grandson visit. I didn't explain the reason for the change. I just told them that things didn't work out with the mother-in-law. I told my wife that my parents can watch our son instead, and that she should call her mom and tell her that we no longer need her to babysit. She said that she didn't want to do that because she was really looking forward to seeing our son. It has been over 6 months. I told her that if she was looking forward to it that much, she wouldn't be trying to swindle us out of $500. I told her if she didn't want to make the call, I would gladly do it for her. She reluctantly made the call herself, but it didn't go well. Her mom got upset because we are now depriving her of seeing her grandson. My wife got emotional and ended up backtracking and said that she would talk to me and see if we could work something out. After the call, she asked me if there was some way we could figure this out, and I told her we aren't changing anything again this close to our trip. She said that maybe we could offer her a lesser amount, but I reiterated that it isn't about the money. It's about her being sneaky and trying to take advantage of both of us. So am I the jerk for refusing to pay my mother-in-law just to babysit our toddler for a few days while we go on vacation? No, you are not the jerk in this situation. Your mother-in-law is absolutely being manipulative. Your parents are happily available to babysit that kid without taking a dime out of your pockets. Literally, this is the first vacation you've had in what, 4 years at this point? The fact that she's doing this literally at the last second just to try and scrape some money out of your pockets for your vacation is honestly incredibly toxic. And to top it all off, she's clearly trying to guilt trip her daughter into allowing her to not only babysit, but also try and take basically $500 out of your pockets. And this also kind of leads me to believe that the mother-in-law probably did this while the original poster's wife was growing up, because the wife in this situation is having a very emotional response. And it really seems like this guilt tripping is quite effective on your wife, and that's really unfortunate. So personally, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think the original poster is spot on what's happening in this situation, and I don't blame them for being upset and deciding to go in a different direction. Today, I messed up by making lime-scented sunscreen and causing my body to acquire second-degree sunburn. Here's what happened. I want to start off by saying I love the smell and taste of limes. It reminds me of summer and it makes me feel happy. A while back, I wanted to have some lime-scented sunscreen. In my mind, I was going to the beach and I imagined myself in some kind of tropical getaway. So the night before the beach outing, I got a new bottle of sunscreen and I added a bit of fresh lime juice in it until it smells appropriately like limes. I go to bed that night completely unaware of the nightmares that await me. I go to the beach, put on my sunblock, and sit out in the warm sunlight, just peacefully listening to the waves. A little over an hour passes, and I start to notice a slightly painful sensation coming from my skin. So, in my infinite wisdom, I put on more of my sunscreen. Another 45 minutes or so pass, and my skin is really starting to hurt. I decide it would be for the best if I got into my car for a bit to protect myself from the sun. Over the next half an hour, I can see my skin turning red, the beginnings of blisters everywhere, and my skin is on fire. I start to panic. The pain is getting worse and worse over all of my body. I call my friends telling them that I'm in trouble. By the time my friend arrives, I'm red all over and completely immobilized by the pain. Thinking I'm having some kind of severe allergic reaction, they take me to the emergency room. The response is nearly immediate, and I get assessed in the burn unit. Second-degree sunburn over a majority of my body. I'm admitted to the ICU. Discussions about skin grafts are had, but are luckily not needed thanks to the care of my doctors. Now, you might be thinking just like I was, how does such a thing come to be? Well, it turns out that my favorite fruit contains something called furocoumarin. This fun little compound can cause skin to burn incredibly quickly when exposed to the sunlight, and I rubbed it all over my body before sitting out in the sun. Even to this day, I'm still covered in burn scars. I barely go outside anymore unless I'm covered head to toe, and honestly, I haven't had a lime ever since. Wow, that is honestly really scary. Who could have guessed that that's what the reaction would have been to your body? I mean, just off the bat, it didn't sound like that big of a deal. I don't think I ever would have assumed that limes would cause that much damage to your body. That's a little scary if you think about it. So I guess in hindsight, it is definitely not a good idea to try and mess with your sunscreen. And the next time you want something lime scented at the beach, maybe just bring something along that smells nice, instead of putting something on your skin that's just gonna cause second-degree sunburn. Today, I messed up by spending over $1,200 at the bar after I got completely wasted, barely remembering my entire night. And I feel so dumb that I overdrank, and now at this point, I'm out a lot of money. Here's what happened. So I first want to start off by saying that this didn't happen today, but allow me to share one of my stupidest moments with you, if you will. I was working in trades as a 20-year-old at the time, making too much money every week for my own good. My group of colleagues and I decided to go to this bar/restaurant that evening, and before anyone says anything, I'm Canadian, so the legal age of drinking is 19. Some of the guys brought their partners, so the group had roughly 15 people in it. Fun was had, drinks were were flowing, and out came the shots. But seeing as I was the youngest of the group, I was requesting the drinks for each round of shots, which I took part in about 8 or 9 rounds of it. And these were rapid fire style, making sure everyone who was game got a turn. Me not having an ounce of food in my stomach, and now starting to feel the effects of multiple shots in rapid succession, decided to ask the waitress for my bill, as I knew the night was not a long one for me. The night was already starting to blur. I only remember bits and parts by this point, so she brings me the bill, which included roughly 30 plus various 1 ounce to 2 ounce shots, and it was already up to the amount of $300. I, not wanting to ask her to split it up, as I was trying to impress, decided I wanted to pay in cash. Don't ask me why, I don't honestly know why I did that. So I stumbled myself over to the front of the bar where 2 ATMs were at and attempted to withdraw $400. I stood there probably longer than I remember, and nothing happened. I feel a tap on my shoulder from the bouncer, who was probably watching this whole thing with amusement, who said to me, "Try the other one," pointing to the other ATM. So I stumble over there, try to withdraw $400 again, and nothing happens. I hit cancel, wait for it to eject my card, and promptly walk away. The rest of the night was naturally a complete blur. I remember a friend helping me into a cab, but unknowing to me, another friend took my keys as they didn't want me to drive home. I drove the 10 minutes and had every intention of picking my car up sometime the next day. I woke up at 7 in the morning in the hallway of my apartment building, a $20 bill laying next to me, my phone tucked into my shoelaces, sleeping against my apartment door, while also realizing that I didn't have my keys, but I somehow made it into the apartment building. I figured my keys were somewhere between the front door and the apartment, but nope, they weren't there. Eventually, I texted my roommate, who fortunately woke up to the ding and let me into my apartment. I slept another couple of hours until 11 o'clock a.m., and in my self-inflicted pain, I decided to check my bank account. Lo and behold, I discovered that not only did I end up paying my bill with my card, but also both attempts at withdrawing $400 were successful. To this day, I swear that bouncer was watching me stumble around the whole time and watched as dozens of bills exited the machine, completely unbeknownst to me. I also ordered a steak and chips for dinner and another pitcher, bringing the bill close to $400. It honestly made that hangover a lot worse. So you know what? Lesson learned, kids. Know your limits and try to drink within it. Wow, that's an awful situation. This guy literally spent $1,200 at the bar and no one within sight tried to stop them. I mean, seriously, that's a lot of money to drop in one night. Also, that situation is a little bit scary. I mean, here you are waking up in front of your apartment and you're not sure what happened, only to then check your bank account and be like, oh no, I made a big mistake. So hopefully you learned your lesson and you'll try to be more careful moving forward, because literally losing $1,200 in one night is not something anybody would ever want to do twice. My entitled manager makes the loss prevention team at my store take an entire week off of work just to save money for the company. So I decided to get some revenge and remind them of how important my job really was. And as a result, my shady friends came in there without anyone to stop them and stole thousands of dollars worth of merchandise, all without anyone to try and stop them, eventually resulting in that store shutting down 2 months later. And I've never been happier to collect unemployment from anybody in my life. Here's what happened. So I used to work in loss prevention for a regional chain of electronic stores. My job was basically to patrol the store in plain clothing and detain someone if I caught them trying to steal. I've worked private security before, so this was a pretty nice gig. The store's corporate policy, for reasons I cannot quite comprehend, mandated a weekly quota of shoplifter apprehensions, which we called stops. We needed to have at least 3 stops a week. Usually, we had just about 10, which was just shy of 2 per day, and obviously most of the stops involved expensive electronics. We paid our own salaries many times over and saved the company an astronomical amount of money. That is until one fateful week. Saturday rolled around and all our loss prevention personnel were called into the office. There were 4 of us in total. The store manager told us that only 2 stops had been made for the week, so we had not met our quota. He contacted corporate and they told him to give all loss prevention personnel the entire week off just to save on the cost. An extra cashier would be scheduled to stand by the door as a deterrent. Now, as you can imagine, a week of no pay did not go over well with any of us, and it was particularly bad timing for me. My rent was due, my dog had some vet bills, and my nephew's birthday was coming up. I and all of my coworkers did everything to fight this. We talked about how we usually met our quota many times over, how we paid our our own salaries with all the stops that we did, how much money we had saved the company, how laughably ineffective an untrained cashier standing by the door would be, but it all fell on deaf ears. By the end of it, the manager was clearly flustered, but insisted that we just stay at home the next week. He said that we should think of it as a vacation. I mean, we all had paid time off available, but of course, he said that we couldn't use it. He said that it's about cutting losses for the company. Cutting losses, you say? Well, if only he knew the garbage I was about to pull. We all went home feeling angry and wronged. But before I even set foot in my door, I had the vague beginnings of a plan for absolute vengeance. Now, for some context, I had a few friends, or I guess acquaintances, who were a bit shady. They were generally straight-laced, but they themselves had friends who were even shadier. Dealers, addicts, and even a few gang members if the rumors were true. They usually hung out in one of 3 parks in the city limits. So after blowing off some steam at home, I began to make my rounds. The conversation with each group followed a pretty set pattern. I would say hi but look a little upset, and they would then ask me how I was doing. I would say something like, well, not too good, I guess. My store just gave the entire loss prevention team the week off just to try and save money. I'm gonna miss out on an entire week of pay. A few would probe a bit and I would verify that yes, anyone could just walk into the store and take stuff out of it without having to worry about an undercover loss prevention watching them. Now, I knew that my plan was beginning to take hold when someone I had not talked to posted on Facebook asking if it was true that this store had no loss prevention for this entire week. The word seriously gets around fast. All I had to do was now head to the store, grab a 30-pack of beer, and slowly drink the week away while this all went down. People lost their minds. A bunch of product went missing every single day, and not just little things. People were apparently walking out with giant flat-screen TVs and refusing to stop for the lowly cashier by the door. Tablets, laptops, notebooks, and consoles, they all vanished into thin air. Several cell phones from the display case even went missing. But I would not hear about this till later though. All I know is that on Wednesday, hardly halfway through my unpaid week off, I got a call from work, but I let it go to voicemail, and I couldn't help but crack a smile when I finally listened to it. It was the store manager asking me to come in and work a full shift because of all of the problems they've been having. You could almost hear the desperation in his voice. I knew my little scheme had worked perfectly, but sadly, I chose not to respond or come in for work that day. Even if I wanted to, I was pretty deep into a 6-pack at the time. I got another call the following day, which this time I answered. I said to them, "Boss, I'm so sorry, but I'm actually 8 hours away at the beach right now. I thought going out of town would be a good idea since, you know, you told us to treat this like a vacation." In reality, I was still in my pajamas, drinking coffee, and watching my favorite television show all day. The following day, I didn't get a phone call. The store had to bus loss prevention personnel in from other stores and had a police officer standing by the door. I'm sure the police department was happy to oblige, and I can only imagine how many calls they got from the store over the past week. When I went back after my week off was up, there were 2 new policies that were tacked right onto the bulletin board. For starters, at least one lost personnel associate must be on the floor from open to close, and the quota was changed from the number of stops per week to the amount of money saved in a month, a much more flexible and reasonable quota that the 4 of us would have no problem meeting. Well, I should say 3 of us actually. One of my fellow loss prevention coworkers made use of their week off by getting a new job, and honestly, good for them. Now, I never did learn the hard numbers on how much money hemorrhaged out of that store, but I do know that it was somewhere in the 6-figure range. I thought about getting a new job myself, but it didn't prove to be necessary. I guess a company that cuts all loss prevention for a week must have deeper financial problems, because the whole chain folded 2 months later. I then got to spend my days drinking beer, watching Netflix, and getting paid unemployment for it. I ended up landing a new job with a private security firm that paid me much better. I eventually ran into my shadier acquaintances showing off their new iPads a few days after this mess, and needless to say, I think I know exactly how they got them. Yeah, that's a crazy circumstance to be stuck in. Imagine working your job and then getting sent home for an entire week, all because the boss and your store didn't want to pay you. I think I would have lost my mind if I had to deal with that. That must have been awful, but you know what? It kind of worked out in the end, because that store learned very quickly that yes, your job is very important, and without you being there to try and stop the bad guys from getting their merchandise, they will literally lose thousands of dollars, and they've got no one to blame for that except themselves. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius? Check it out, link down below in the description. Also follow Am I the Jerk on Instagram and Twitter to see all the stories that couldn't make it into the videos. Am I the jerk because I got my daughter an $80 dress because she was so kind to her younger brother? Here's what happened. So my family just got back from a week-long cruise, and there is still some tension about this situation. My wife and I took our 20-year-old son, 16-year-old daughter, 13-year-old son, and 7-year-old son. Our oldest spent most of his time on vacation doing his own thing, having breakfast and dinner with the family, but being seldom seen otherwise. My wife and I enjoyed spending time with our kids, but we also did some couple activities as well. There are clubs on the boat for kids, and our 13-year-old really enjoyed them, but our 7-year-old didn't, and kept wanting to spend the day with his sister, who we had given carte blanche to do her own thing as long as she ate with us, and answered when we messaged her. She was a good sport and took her little brother on most of her adventures, swimming with him, taking him to trivia, and doing the animation classes with him. I felt like this was a very sweet thing of her and showed a great deal of maturity. The second to last day of the cruise, I took her to the gift shop and I told her to pick out whatever she wanted as a thank you for looking after her brother. She was very excited and ended up picking out a dress. The dress was $80. She wore it to dinner and that night, and when she told her mom I bought it for her, my wife gave me a weird look. After dinner, she asked me why in the world I did that. I explained that it was a reward for looking after her brother. She said that we can't buy an $80 dress for our daughter and then get nothing for our sons. I said we didn't get them nothing. We literally took them on a cruise. My wife said that I'm an idiot, but I don't think so. We got some trinkets for the younger boys, about $20 worth of stuff, and my wife thinks that I messed up and said that I should apologize to the boys. But I refuse. We took our adult son on a vacation that cost thousands of dollars. He has no reason to resent his sister for being rewarded for being thoughtful. If we got our 7-year-old and our 13-year-old a really expensive souvenir, it would probably be lost or broken. She still thinks that I'm a jerk though. Now, just to clarify, we did not tell our daughter to explicitly babysit her brother. That's not the case at all. What kept happening was that she would tell us her plans for the day, and the 7-year-old would say that he'd rather go do that than go to the kids club, and she would agree to let him come with her. So it was more of her just being a nice sister than actually babysitting. She always had the ability to drop him off at the club, and that's why I wanted to reward her, because I thought it was so sweet of her to not do that and to make her brother feel good about his cool older sister wanting to hang out with him. So honestly, am I the jerk for wanting to get my daughter a dress as some kind of reward for watching over her little brother? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I honestly think that's really sweet and really endearing. Your daughter was literally being a good older sister. She could have easily just gone off on her own and said, okay, see you later, bye, I'm not spending time with you. But instead, she decided to step up and let her little brother come along with her. I mean, nobody asked her to do that. She literally did that on her own. And that, in my opinion, is a sign of a really good older sister. So no, you're not the jerk and you didn't do anything wrong for getting her that dress. That was clearly a gift that honestly nobody is having a problem with except for your wife for some reason. And I don't think there's anything wrong with her getting that gift and your sons getting something simple, because at the end of the day, they got to go on a cruise, and that is already a fantastic way to spend a vacation. Am I the jerk for checking my husband's dashcam footage on his car without his consent, even though I was trying to figure out what happened to our dog? Here's what happened. So I live with my husband and my daughter. My daughter and I recently went on a short trip out of state while my husband stayed, as he had work and was supposed to look after our dog. On the last day of our trip, we got a call from my husband, who was acting distraught and said that our dog had run away and that he could not find her. He claimed that she just bolted away from him in the park and she went into some bushes and he could not find her. Our dog is quite small. It's a mini poodle mix and it's almost 13 years old. She is still active, but it is really unlike her to run away from us. So I was suspicious, but chose to believe my husband. I mean, my daughter and I were in grief for the loss of our dog, but we did not want to blame him. When we came back home, he seemed surprisingly okay, unlike us. Ever since the pandemic, my husband started working from home, and he has always been annoyed at how much attention we gave the dog and hated how the dog begged to sit on our laps and his while he worked. A few days later, we got a call from Animal Rescue in our neighborhood stating quite far from us that she had been found. I picked up the phone and it was on our landline, which we almost never use these days, but it was the contact on the microchip. I told my husband and he just said, "This is great, I'm I'm so happy. But it felt kind of blunt and insincere. I said it's strange that she got so far, and he responded that someone must have stolen her and then abandoned her. This made little sense to me as to why that would happen. So when he was out drinking with his buddies, I copied the videos from his dash cam for the days I was away, and I saw that he had indeed taken the dog far out of state, had clearly dropped her off in front of his car, thrown a frisbee-like object into a field, yelled at her to fetch, and then drove off without her. I was livid and confronted him, and he just stupidly muttered how he dropped her there so she could find a farm and have a better life. And then the next day, he got angry at me for viewing his dash cam, and he called me and my daughter jerks. So I need to know, am I the jerk for checking my husband's dash cam footage on his car, all without his consent, just to try and figure out what happened to my dog? Wow, your husband is an awful person. Let me get this straight. He literally took the dog out of state, threw a frisbee and said, "Go fetch," and then got in his car and then took off. Like, are you kidding me right now? This guy has clearly seen one too many movies, because that's a horrible thing to do. Like, there's no good excuse for treating a dog like that. A dog, in my opinion, is a member of the family. It is trusting that you're going to take care of it. Like, seriously, this guy has some serious problems. And it's also a massive red flag that he freaked out that you're looking at his dash cam footage. I mean, if this heartless jerk can clearly get rid of his dog by just throwing a frisbee out of state and then running off like nothing happened, what else could he possibly be hiding from you? I bet that dash cam has a lot of footage that you probably don't know about. So no, you are absolutely not the jerk for checking the dash cam footage. I mean, honestly, let's just thank our lucky stars that it was even there in the first place to check. So honestly, hopefully this all works out for you, because this pathetic excuse for a man is an absolute dirtbag, and he had no right to treat that dog in that way. Today, I messed up by realizing that I destroyed an art piece in an art gallery 10 years ago, and now I feel really bad and I don't know what to do. Okay, I want to start off by saying that while this event happened 10 years ago, I literally just realized an hour ago what I actually did. In 2014, I was just completing my master's degree in design. Now, the degree was set up in such a way where it was one course of 40 people, but we were all doing different areas, from dance to architecture, sculpture, textiles, everything and anything. We would have lectures together and present the progress on our projects every couple of months. So the end of the year comes around and we start setting up our final gallery show. The space we were using was the first year art students workshop, which we cleared out, prepped, and painted it fresh. When I arrived to do my part, one wall was a complete mess, like 100 holes all over it, like a hammer and knife attack. I was angry that a first year did this to a structural wall, so I decided to grab the sandpaper, some filler, and some paint just to try and fix it. The show went ahead fine, with a warning wet paint sign on that section. I think you can tell where this might be going. You know how your brain suddenly reminds you of things out of nowhere? Stuff like, oh man, my laundry, or oh, I forgot to pay that bill. Well, I'm sitting in my bed and suddenly I realize, oh no, that was Anna's master degree piece. You see, Anna was a part-time mature student on different hours to the rest of us. We saw one presentation of her work, which was about making repeated holes into paper and cardboard. I never thought about it much again. She must have come in before the rest of us, created the wall piece for the show, and then left. And I just went in, filled it all in, and painted over it. To be fair, she never really left any note or a name on the piece of art. I honestly don't even know if she knew what happened to it, since it's not like she would need to come back to collect it after the show, since it was, you know, a wall. If she did, I hope she saw humor in it and added it to the piece's story, saying something like, humans crave to repair damage, or something like that. Either way, I'm now silently cringing, and I may need to repent to the art gods, or else karma will come back and strike me down. So sure, that is kind of a mess up to some degree, but you know what? If your classmate didn't want that supposed art project to get fixed and painted over, well then they probably should have properly labeled it. Like seriously, they didn't tell anybody that's their work. They didn't put up a note or a sign or anything along those lines. Like seriously, this is your classmate's fault, not yours. You were literally just trying to make that place look good in preparation for the art show. So I mean, sure, in retrospect, maybe you did mess up, but at the end of the day, this is completely Anna's fault, not yours. Am I the jerk for telling off my brother-in-law after he mocked my son for going to therapy? Here's what happened. I'm a 38-year-old male, and my 15-year-old son has been in therapy for the past few months after his best friend passed away. It was very hard for him, and while I've always been there to help him, my wife and I felt that having a therapist would be best. He seems to be making a lot of progress, so I know it's working. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law is the type of man who thinks that men shouldn't express their emotions. Now, I've always thought this was complete baloney, so I made sure my wife and I were on the same page about not letting that happen. Last night, there was a family gathering. My son had just had his therapy session, so we picked him up and drove there. While we were there, my son was telling me about something they talked about, and my brother-in-law must have overheard it, because he started on a tangent about boys not needing therapy and calling my son a girl. I probably wouldn't have reacted as much if my son hadn't been there, but my son was visibly hurt by what he was saying. I was angry at him, and I told him to get lost, stating that right now, my son is more of a man than he is. I would have liked to say more, but I didn't want to upset my son further. I admit that I might have gone a little too far, but I was defending my son. But I don't think someone who shames someone else for being healthy while also being sexist is being a man. My brother-in-law just glared at me and stormed out of the house. My wife told me that we were leaving, so I got my son and we left. My son didn't say much the rest of the night, but my wife sure did. She was mad at me for doing that and saying I disrespected her brother. I tried to explain I was just defending my son from him, but she wouldn't take it and is ignoring me. I'm still mad over this. My son was shamed for expressing his emotions, and then everyone gets mad at me for defending him. But all of their reactions are making me second guess myself and wondering if I'm secretly the jerk here. What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk for stepping in and defending your son. Your brother-in-law was absolutely being a jerk. He disrespected your child in front of everybody. And by the way, your son's going through a really difficult time right now. His best friend passed away, and things have been so bad that he needed therapy to try and deal with this situation. You literally did your job as a parent, and in no way do I think that makes you the jerk in the slightest. Am I the jerk for speaking to my child in Polish, even though my boyfriend has asked me not to do it? Here's what happened. I'm a 21-year-old female, and I've been dating my boyfriend who's 26 years old for about 3 years now. We have a son together who's 13 months old. Not too long ago, my son said his first word, and I decided that now might be a good time for me to teach him Polish in addition to English. So for the past few days, I've been speaking Polish to him. I know he won't learn it straight away, but in a few years, he might be fluent. However, when my boyfriend saw me saying Polish words to him, he said that I should stop doing that. I asked him why, and he said it wouldn't be fair if we could communicate with each other in a language that he could not understand. He even said that Polish wasn't a useful language to learn, like Spanish or French. I have acknowledged this, but I have continued to do this, even though my boyfriend has asked me to stop. I feel guilty, but I do want to share my first language with my child. I also feel hurt that he doesn't care about my language, so I need to know, am I the jerk for speaking to my child in Polish, even though my boyfriend has asked me not to, and is really against the idea of my son learning the language? You are not the jerk for teaching your son a second language. Your boyfriend is being an idiot. Seriously, this guy is a complete moron. Why would he not want his son to be bilingual? Now that I'm an adult, I'm personally very furious that I don't know a second language. Like, I never had the chance that some people had of not only learning a second language in school with like a really good program because I never had one, or to have a native speaking family member who speaks that language. Like, seriously, this is a really good opportunity for this kid. And just because he's learning Polish doesn't mean that it won't be useful in his life, because most kids who are bilingual earlier in life might have an easier time learning other languages. And teaching him when he's younger and carrying on this language to your son would not only be a really good way of keeping your family line alive, but it's also a good way to set him up for life. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation. Your boyfriend is a complete idiot, and seriously, if he wants to know what you're saying to your son in Polish, then it's time for him to pick up a book and learn Polish, because as far as I'm concerned, it would be a disservice to not share this with your son. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.